All right, you can have that screen. All my stuff.
I know.
My
We got
stuff.
a guy in our office who does that.
Just encroaches
If
everywhere.
you leave our horizontal space, he's gonna have it filled with that stuff. Is mine- Should I be working here?
It should be on.
Switch.
I believe.
What screen has this?
That's also gonna be a presenter.
After it's been announced, yeah,
No, she's
right
not
then.
gonna be here, but she'll be a presenter.
Who's in this town of Frisco right now? Me?
Not her. Other times people-
How are you, Tim?
You guys see that there's a conflict there.
Yeah,
This one's obvious enough, right?
we don't even need to go there.
Here's what this is.
If somebody wanted to take a vote on that, I would just say, "Don't- let's not, just not.
See,
No, there's no
hopefully
need for that.
It's 3 till 5. Should we be worried about Ira not coming?
This
Because
is-
he's our
this is
quorum
my
for
screen.
agenda
Yes,
item
that's
1.
it.
Oh, I did this one.
Oh, He's our quorum for item 1.
And Lena's gonna be late. And Robert's not here.
Is that true? Geico's been saving folks money.
You didn't want to hear about Lake Hill? He must have something pretty big going.
Well, and I think he's on,
Oh, is he gonna zoom in?
no, I
I
think
just need the town.
he's on county's 10-mile planning commission as well.
Yeah.
So he's getting-
Or countywide, he's on one of them. I don't know.
Is that the staff PC that had that file explorer up? Gotcha. Cool.
So now everybody's looking at your computer.
Yep.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Did you? No, we went to.
Going all right.
Donna and Andy.
You're in the Zoom. Do you want to go ahead and go in, start your recording, start the meeting?
I started the YouTube recording. So
Okay.
this should be live.
So, I guess we can talk about it later.
And then I was just using this last week. to see what-
Yeah,
I just come from Cal.
good for you.
Oh.
18 below, I took a picture.
You'll start the recording.
That's what I had, I looked at our thermometer in the kitchen when I got up, I said, I was thinking of going tomorrow.
So the last time we had,
It's still gonna be below zero.
are the cameras on?
That's the last thing we need to do.
Yeah, 'cause this is what I go. We should do.
But, going on a Friday, it's too crowded, I think I'm gonna go Monday.
Friday's the new Saturday.
Monday.
Yeah, this is what we need.
Saturday afternoon is no big deal. I will listen.
I was tempted, with.
I saw that one in the morning, right?
And then when I go to,
I had 16 of my
that.
girls.
Perfect.
Oh,
Okay,
good
sweet.
job. Okay.
I was like, this was way easier last week. Here we go.
I was gone, he was gone, making it harder this week.
Yeah.
At the
There's
lectern.
Scapegoating.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I'll say it's. I'm good.
Alright.
Should I wait for Ira to call?
Wait for Ira to come back. He said he'd be back in 2 seconds.
It's like a heads up so I can,
Yep, we're not quite there yet.
give me like a 10-second heads up so I'll start the recording.
Okay.
You see what, Ira come back through the door and sit down. That'll be your one.
There's your heads up.
Yeah.
He does, I would love it. This is like a little.
Just touch things.
Yeah, just push this
It's a touch
around,
screen.
check
It's all
that.
good.
I hereby call to order the February 3rd, 2022 Town of Frisco Planning Commission meeting. Cheryl, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Withrow,
Here.
Commissioner Tain,
Here.
Commissioner Gleason,
Here.
Commissioner Stabile,
Here.
Commissioner Scupion,
Here.
Commissioner Lesmes is absent, but she will join the meeting in about 15 minutes. She'll be running late. Commissioner Franken is absent from the meeting tonight.
Thank you, Cheryl. The minutes from the January 20th, 2022 meeting were distributed. Any comments or corrections?
I want to say that the minutes were incredible. They were so detail oriented. They were great. So thank you for doing that.
Do you have a motion?
Motion passed.
Second to approve.
Will you please call a vote on that?
Commissioner Withrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Tain,
Yes.
Commissioner Gleason,
Yes.
Commissioner Stabile,
Yeah.
Commissioner Scupion,
Yes.
Commissioner Lesmes, absent, Commissioner Franken, absent. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Just a couple of housekeeping, please remember to move into your microphone so that everybody online can hear us. At this time, I will open the floor to public comment. If you wish to make a comment on anything that is not on tonight's agenda items, now is your opportunity. I'm seeing nobody in the audience here, so if you are online, please raise your hand if you wish to make public comment at this time. I am seeing no public comment. We will close the public comment portion of this meeting and move on to agenda items. First agenda item is planning file number MAJ-21-0006, a public hearing of the major site plan application for a proposed multifamily project, townhome project located at 318 South Second Avenue, lots 13 through 16, block 24, Frisco Town Site. Applicant Alan Guerra Architecture representing 318 South Second Avenue LLC. Don, I will turn it over to you.
And before you do, I think Commissioner Stabile has a comment. I'm gonna refuse from this. It is another project.
Public hearing of the major site plan application. Wonderful. Andy Stabile is recusing himself for this agenda item.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So rolling into this, as you stated, this is a major site plan application. It's the final review for it, MAJ 21-006. This project is to develop 5 individual townhomes located at 318 South Second Avenue. 4 of the 5 units will have 4 bedrooms, and the 5th one will be a 3-bedroom unit. Do have the screen share up, so I'll just start rolling through. As you can see on the site plan, the property is bounded on the south by Frisco Street, on the west by Second Avenue, and on the north by the alley, the Frisco Street alley. 2 of the units will access from the alley, 2 of the units will access from Frisco Street, and 1 will access from Second Avenue. The Planning Commission did discuss this at their October 7th meeting, and had as a sketch plan and had a number of comments. So this is, and because we do have a full agenda this evening as well, I'm going to go through at a very high level and focus on some key points of the application before we get to the findings. If you have any questions or would like some more detail on any of these things as I'm going through, let me know, but otherwise I'm going to keep it fairly succinct since you all have had a chance to read the staff report. So the sketch plan had a few key items that the Planning Commission commented on. One was that they would like the applicant to reduce the bulk plan encroachments. The second is that the applicant would like to see the internal bike paths tie into the bike path on Second Avenue. Also look at the roof pitches on the 112 as a 112 pitch. Could create issues with snow. Another comment was that the larger unit seemed out of scale to the neighborhood. And because of the large size of the unit, the Planning Commission is not in favor of bulk plan encroachments, and suggested that the applicant make the units a little less massive. And then finally, that the Planning Commission noted that the parking at Unit 2 may lack some functionality. So the applicant did address some of these comments in their resubmittal, and we'll get to those as we go through it. Moving on, the next step portion that I really want to focus on is the development standards and starting with the access. As mentioned, and I'll zoom in a little bit on this if I can find it here. There was some concern with the access. First of all, with the separation of the driveway accesses, it's required to be a minimum 30 feet. The original comments from the Public Works Department had some question on whether or not that 30 feet was being met. If it is measured at the property line, 30 feet is not being met. If it's met where it ties into the pavement or the traveled surface of the road, it is being met. So finding it here is that requirement is being met at this point in time. There is one place where the driveway separations are not met regardless, and that's with the driveway between unit 4 shown in the upper right and the trash enclosure for the project. There's not a 30-foot separation there. So a waiver from Public Works will be required in order to meet that or to allow that separation not being met. Moving on, the next thing was parking. So again, as noted at the sketch plan review, that there's some question on the parking for the project. Because there's a total of 19 bedrooms, there's a total of 19 parking spaces required, plus 1 visitor parking space for the 5 units. Units 1, 3, 4, and 5 meet the parking requirements easily. They do have tandem spacing, two parking spaces in the garage, 2 parking spaces in the driveway for each of those units. Unit 2 is where it became a little bit, we'll say, trickier. Unit 2 has a 2-car garage and 1 tandem space immediately behind it. And as shown here in the center of the screen, the visitor parking space is also located adjacent to the tandem space between behind or at unit 2. There is some concern from staff perspective, and I think the Planning Commission shared that concern as well, that the parking space for we'll say the lower, the second access or
Okay,
garage
well, hey,
space.
this is great. I'll do
Okay.
fine. I think I'm looking
You will
forward to
be.
it.
Thanks so much for going.
That was interesting, but I'll continue on. So there was some concern that the second garage space would back straight out over landscaping, over the path, and effectively creating a wider driveway. And there's some functionality concerns with that. That is still shown in this plan. The applicant, I did meet with the applicant. They have some comments that they'd like to discuss on that as far as how they may want to address that. However, that is an outstanding comment that staff has in the findings as well as in the conditions for this related to that access point. So if the Planning Commission ultimately does find that the layout of the tandem parking is functional, then the application will meet the parking requirement standard. Moving on to the next piece that I wanted to highlight, residential development standards. So again, here at the sketch plan meeting, the Planning Commission did have a number of comments regarding the overall building design. Generally, the materials were appropriate, and there is a material board sitting outside the room if you did not have a chance to look at that prior to the meeting, in addition to what was presented in the application. So as long as all the materials are not reflective and whatever else, I think the Planning Commission's concerns were met by that. However, there were some concerns as noted with the roof pitches as well as the bulk plane encroachment. So I'll get down on the drawings too there. There's a lot of civil drawings, get through civil, maybe continue to get through civil, architecture, floor plans. And finally, here we go to the materials. So again, the materials, I do believe meet the material standards on this. Get down to the bulk plane. You can start to see here some of the bulk plane encroachments. So at certain areas, at decks and overhangs and roof lines, you do see some bulk plane encroachments at various locations. And there's an exhibit that demonstrates that. There was also excerpted in the staff report as well. The planning commission, at the sketch plan, there was a total of 440, I believe, 420 cubic feet of bulk plant encroachments. With this resubmittal, it has been decreased to 313 cubic feet of bulk plant encroachments. Again, the applicant has noted in their commentary and narrative that they feel that the bulk plane encroachments in this case do add to the architectural characteristics or the architectural uniqueness of the project. So if the planning commission concurs with that, you will have to make a finding to that effect. And there is a finding included on the last page of the staff report related to that. Again, here you do see the bulk plane encroachments where they're located, and they are primarily roof eaves with some deck railings, as you can see here and there. All right, so the next comment the next step is actually, those were the main issues that I wanted to highlight. The next step is staff recommendations, which are on page 22 of the staff report. Rather than reading all the findings, I'm going to highlight just a couple of them. Number 4 is that the proposed development application is in general conformance with the town of Frisco zoning regulations, specifically section 180-6.223 bulk standards, since applicable requirements with regard to bulk standards have been met by the submittal and the recommended conditions of approval. And therefore you would have to make that finding that the bulk plane encroachments are making substantial architectural relief. The next one I'd like to highlight is number 6, and that is that the proposed development application is in general conformance with the town of Frisco zoning code, specifically parking and loading regulations. And this is related to the layout of unit 2 and the visitor parking space and the tandem parking itself. So finally, staff, it does have a couple of recommended conditions if the planning commission is going to move for approval. Those would be prior to certificate of occupancy, there shall be a final plat to vacate the property lines, which may be done through a townhome plat. Secondly, that the applicant shall satisfy conditions of public works relative to work in the town right of way. Third, that the applicant shall apply to public works for required waivers for alley access and the driveway separation. Fourth is that the applicant shall satisfy all other comments of Public Works and Xcel Energy. And finally, that the applicant shall evaluate the unit 2 driveway to ensure that the access to the garage and visitor parking space is functional. So with that, I can answer any questions. I know I did go through that relatively quickly because we do have a full agenda, but if there's any specific questions you'd like me to address or standards you'd like me to dive into a little bit more, I'm happy to do so. Ira. Oh.
Yep, questions for staff.
So it has yet to be determined how they're gonna resolve that parking on 2.
Correct. Again, they've made the position in their narrative and their application that they believe it is functional. I think they're going to address that further this evening. I did have some discussions with the applicant that if they are keeping it at current configuration, there should be some landscape boulders, some landscaping, something like that, so that the car cannot back out directly, as was my concern.
Because from what I see here, we see both cars, the one in the outside spot as well as the one in the garage, very problematic. So I'm interested to hear what goes on.
Yep, me too.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am.
Questions for staff?
So basically, so the driveway goes over the bike path.
Correct.
Thank you.
Questions for staff?
This is a sticky point, the parking number 2. But if we were to say, I don't buy it, where does that leave the applicant?
Well, at that point, we would be finding that the tandem parking standard is not being met, is not being fulfilled. So they would have to come up with a new plan, or they could potentially appeal that denial, because that's where you'd be, is either denying or continuing the application.
Okay, so this is a question again for the town. If the driveway, leave it exactly where you have it on the screen. If the drive to the street were to shift, we'll just say down the page,
Mhm.
and the swerve was to the accessory parking or the visitor parking,
Mhm.
would that be compliant under town standards?
I believe so. We would have to look at that. And again, the applicant has, or he showed me some diagrams on how they did look at that and analyze that. So I'll let the applicant address that a little bit further.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah, we would have to find a determination whether that was compliant with town standards or not. I think there would be maybe some concern on whether or not the visitor parking would still be accessible.
Thanks.
The question, Ira?
Well, this is the last one, still on the parking. So
I think parking might be the issue.
parking sounds like the issue. I mean, so the maneuvering space to get into that garage, right? There's a garage in front of that space,
That's correct, right here.
right there, yes.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that space is less than 20 feet, isn't that right?
Correct. I believe it's 22 feet from the garage face to the property line.
On the longer side,
On the
yeah.
long
So, you know, you gotta be pretty good driving all the time to maneuver a car in and out in only that amount of footage. That's my point.
Any other questions? My only question is, remind me, does driveways count for lot coverage,
Driveways do count for lot coverage.
even if they're not paved?
Yes.
That's my only question, so we will turn it over to the applicant.
And
Oh.
you're-
We did have one online comment.
Well,
Oh, okay.
so we will turn it over to Tim Sabo.
You want me to just
Um,
unplug here?
Hi again, you guys. This wasn't my project in the office, but I'm here to present about it. And I feel like I'm thrown to the wolves about this parking thing a little bit, but I wanted to pass this around. I'm going to show it on the screen, but may I hand this around? It's just showing a few of the options that were discussed with Dawn and the person who is in our office who is running this project. You guys go ahead. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to address the other comments besides the parking thing, but I think since we're all talking about that one, I'd love to jump in there for a little bit. It's, where is that PDF? Here it is. So this is what I just passed around so you can look at it up close on paper. And then this is as proposed. And we found this layout to be actually approved 2 lots over on the project that's going over here. And so that's kind of where Andy felt that it seemed like it worked. We talked to the civil engineer. He said, you could do it. And to your point, you'd be a good driver if you do it all the time. And obviously you want to be a good driver, of course, but that is the situation to describe the issues that you've got the 18 feet of where your driveway is allowed to cross the property line. It has to be a maximum of 18 feet. We've got the guest parking space accounted for here. And the 3 parking spaces for unit 2, 2 of them in the garage and 1 outside. And so you could imagine one, maybe you could pull anywhere you want in that driveway. We just got indicated straight in. And this would be the area that we talked about, a bollard or some boulders or something like that to prevent from someone backing out straight over landscaping or gravel or dirt or whatever's in the right of way between there and the driveway and the property line. And so we think it would work. Our civil engineer says it would work. And it had been, kind of approved, not that anything sets any precedents, but 2 lots over. So that was the configuration that we looked at as the most viable. But I wanted to just show some of the other thoughts and why we didn't think they would work as well. This one shows the 3 spots for unit 2, 2 of them in the garage, 1 of them here. You can see that you could tuck in there pretty easily. And you could pull straight in and out. This still allows for 18 feet to cross the property line. The problem comes in over here where the guest space is, which there's kind of been a discussion about guest spaces for this whole subdivision. Most people, in unit 1, they'd say, hey, park in our driveway. And if they ran out of space, maybe park in the alley or park somewhere else, unless it's an overnight thing. We've got a guest space here. And this is where it happens to be for the whole development of 5 units. And so if this person in unit 2 left their car out, can you see the cursor? Yeah, if they left their car out right in this space, instead of, the space that we've accounted for in the planning, it would be hard to get a car through here to the guest space. So that arrangement, kind of centering the driveway on the 3 spaces and not centered on one of the bays was presenting a problem with the guest parking space. And then the other option, I think someone mentioned it, was flipping the driveway, is the same situation. Kind of this driveway serves perfectly unit 2. And if we are counting a guest space for the whole development to be here, it's the same situation. If somebody parks their car here, you get, pinched access to the guest space. And you imagine if somebody really wants to get in there, they're going to cut across that too. And so based on those 3 options, we felt that this one, and our civil engineer believes that with these turning radii that he provided to us, that this one legitimately works and it's the best case. And so that's why we've still left it in there. That one that I mentioned that's just two parcels over, I guess, isn't built yet. We haven't seen how it functions. So I imagine you're gonna have to be a good driver, but on paper it works, and by engineering standards it works, I guess. And I've got, a 17-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter that could probably prove it won't work pretty easily and bang up their car if we put a boulder there. So that said, that was the first issue, and that's worth debating further, but I just want to, address that first. And then I've got a couple of, the other thing mentioned was the bulk planes. I've got a comparison. We were told to reduce the bulk plane encroachments. And when I look at bulk planes, I try to keep in mind what I feel is the intent of the bulk plane code is the view corridors that we're trying to preserve, so that buildings kind of step back away from the road so you can look out over the buildings in each direction and see the mountains. Whenever I pull this up, this is the first one you saw in the bulk plane encroachments from the planning sketch plan review set. And this is the same view as what has happened now. And so if I go back, you can see that there's a little more rail showing, a little more roof showing here. And then these roofs, we've adjusted so that they don't encroach at all. And so when I go to what's shown now, we've got just a little bit of railing. And we did that through a function of shortening the decks a little, shortening the overhangs a little, and changing the roof height on the overhangs on the upper gables. And so that, you can see it reduced it somewhat. It's a little bit. And so one of the other things I wanted to point out is all the places that, let me pull up this model really quickly, which is right here. All the places in this project that don't come out to the bulk plane, we're talking about just these little things that are just the edges here, and everything else is back, far beyond the bulk plane. So you're still getting a lot of view corridor, and the things that we see that encroach are very minimal as far as calculating a cubic volume of a railing or just some overhangs with some timbers. It seemed to be very negligible. But again, I understand why you guys pointed that out. We've got a lot of density here. So then the other side is this one. Here's what was presented at sketch plan review. Overhangs, decks, and some overhangs down here. And then here is how we've adjusted it. We pulled the overhangs in, we pulled them down a little bit and pulled the decks back so that they don't stick out into that space. One of the things that I always, when I served on planning commission and we talked about bulk plane a lot, I did see a lot of buildings that came in and they were the shape of the bulk plane, which I thought that was not what we wanted to see. And we weren't trying to control the shape of the building and, literally. And so I wanted you to, when you consider this bulk plane encroachment, to keep in mind that we aren't making it the shape of the bulk plane, and we've got all kinds of different shapes in here. And so it doesn't emulate that. It gives lots of visual interest. And some of those things do protrude inches or, maybe a foot or two past there. And we've got the volume down, based on calculating volumes of railings and overhangs to less than 350 feet. So those were the two big things we saw. One of the other things I wanted to point out, which is not evident in this model, apparently our modeling team didn't add that in here, but we did work on connections. I've got the PDF set here. We did work on our connections for the internal pathway system to connect to the bike path, and we thought through it and tried to come up with a logical way to do that. And this is kind of what we thought. Unit 3 down here in the corner. See my cursor? Yeah, and we connected that one directly to the bike path out the side from the front door, as if it was kind of a front walkway to a building. Same with unit 1. Unit 2 obviously had a connection already. They had the driveway. And so the inner pathways, we kind of thought that maybe we would reserve those for just inside and not have someone, bringing their bike out from their garage and going through this way. They would just probably in unit 4 and 5 go out to the alley or to the street and go over to the bike path that way. So we did add some connections, kind of a front stoop look or a front walkway look to the two here. The rest of them we felt had good connections without creating more plow zones or more, different things that really might not get used. And so I wanted to just point that out in case you guys still had concerns about that. One of the other things that, and I'm trying to go fast, just like Dawn. Let's see here. Pedestrian connection to the bike path, the bulk lane. We talked about, I don't know if it's necessary, the transformer location had to move, fit dumpster, things like that. I'm just looking at the notes here. I think that's pretty much it, but I wanted you to consider, as you're considering the bulk lane, we put together a fancy schmancy rendering to kind of show the building as it looks. Maybe it's big on my screen. As it could look in a night scene with everybody home and inhabiting the space. As you can see, it's stepped back and it's cut up, and I feel that it creates an interesting scene, contributes to the view corridor. Doesn't really get in the way that much. You see the railings that would kind of be sticking up there in the edges. So I kind of feel like it's great. Sorry. Our rendering guy really gets carried away with the parties in the
bathing suits.
This was just to show you the forms. If you guys are, don't feel like talking about it anymore, I don't want to drag this part of the meeting on. But if we could go back to that parking thing and hash it out, I think we can make it work. I feel like that on paper works. And I feel like it's if we found that it didn't work in the future, there's I don't know, maybe some things we could do, but that's kind of the gist of the presentation. I know you saw it a lot before. If you have questions or if you want me to address any other comments, I can go for it.
Thank you, Tim.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Really enjoyed the digital walkthrough. Patrick, we'll start with you for questions for the applicant.
Let's see. Well, I mean, it's the parking thing, and I think you looked at it probably the 3 ways I would. Your civil engineer, I'll sit forward. Your civil engineer that you used to look at the turning radii and whatnot. I guess I would look at the diagram and I would say there's zero margin for error of backing out of that one parking place that's in question. I mean, did he think otherwise?
I could ask him. I don't know
Okay.
that, he provided the radii based on whatever it comes in the standards. So
Right.
I
I
don't
mean,
know
the
that
curvatures
means
look,
worst case.
the curvatures look legit in terms of what's possible,
Yeah,
but there's paper and then there's people.
understood.
I'll leave it at that.
All
Thanks.
right. Donna, questions for the applicant?
I have a couple. Was there any more conversation about any of the units being deed restricted?
Did talk to the developer about it, and the developer's got a plan, and that's all we can do is talk to him about it. Based on code, he didn't have to do it, so that's where we are.
I just need to ask.
I'm right there with you.
Are the units going to be solar ready? That was a comment and a question the last time.
That's part of the building code now, so everything's so PV ready,
Okay.
so they have to be.
Is there going to be an HOA since there's 5 units?
Yes.
Okay, are the driveways designed right now to be flat with the street, or is there gonna be like a pan?
Slight grading where it needed to be. I think I've got the civil engineering in here. I have not studied the full set. I've been here to present based on the issues, so I imagine the grading was taken care of by the civil engineer so that it would allow there to be flow along the streets and where necessary. So I imagine it's going to be as level as possible to the street and
Okay.
control flow as necessary.
All right, and in your fancy schmancy 3D rendering, which I think I saw Andy on one of the balconies. There were these, what are these extra street lights? Street lights and landscaping in the right of way.
I think that might have been some artistic license from our rendering guy, because we would not be allowed to put stuff out there in the right of way, obviously. And so that may just be for
And no,
But
and no extra lights on the property line. Correct. Okay. Okay, thank you.
sorry about that.
Looks nice.
Thank you. Ira, questions for the applicant?
Donna just mentioned the driveway, so I assume all of them, like, none of them are back pitched. They're all gonna pitch towards the street.
Correct.
Right, yeah. that's-
Positive drainage away from the building.
Yeah, and she asked about that, and I'm just still befuddled with that unit number 2. Unit number 2 is problematic for me. That's all I have to say.
Understood.
It was very nice. I mean, it's a lot of mass. You got a lot of bedrooms going into that. I remember the little house that got knocked down, but
Right.
good luck with it. It looks impressive.
Awesome. Thank you.
Question?
And I'm sure the developer wouldn't consider making unit 2 a 2-bedroom instead of a 3-bedroom.
I guess I'm not the developer, but we mentioned the comments and talked to him about that. I think you mentioned that before.
Hate to do it,
Right.
but
I think there's a lot of his concern is work at home people, and that people love to have an extra space for an office and things like that. So it may end up being 2 bedrooms, but built for accommodating whatever.
okay, thanks.
And am I correct in Lena has joined? So Lena has now joined Planning Commission. Lena, do you have questions for the applicant?
I don't, and I guess I'd like to recuse myself on this one since I haven't really heard the staff report or the applicant comments. I'll just listen until the work session unless you need me for a vote.
Nope, we have a quorum, so we will
Okay.
recuse you for the remainder of this item.
Great, thank you.
And Tim, I don't
But-
have questions. Oh, sorry.
And I apologize for being late. Sorry.
No
Too
worries,
many
no worries.
meetings.
5 o'clock's an early start time.
Thank you.
And I do not have questions. My questions have been asked more about comments, so I will reserve those for comments. So thank you for your presentation, Tim.
Okay. Should I
Um,
leave this plugged in? Would you need to see anything else or?
I don't think so. You can plug it back in if you need it.
All right.
At this time, we will open the public comment portion of this meeting on this agenda item. And this agenda item only. If there are members of the public that wish to speak, please either raise your hand online, step to the podium, state your name, address, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments on this agenda item at this time? Not for here. Do we have any online?
None at this time.
All right, I'm seeing no public comments, so I'm going to close the public comment portion of this agenda item, and we will move on to comments. I don't know if we just want to collectively talk about this parking and how we wish to address and kind of do it that way versus giving our comments to them, as it's not really feedback oriented.
You're the boss.
Any thoughts and opinions on how we handle the parking?
So the parking requirement is a function of how many bedrooms around the property?
Correct, up to 4.
The 819 and the.
Right. And so that third spot on lot 2 is the guest spot. And so I saw the articulation of different entrances, and I'll agree with Patrick. I mean, what they've done is the best they can get. But it does not solve the problem, because from my point of view, it doesn't show 20 spots. You can't, I mean, that garage, I don't know, I'm trying to think of my directions. That'd be the north garage of lot 2 is landlocked. And the south spot or the middle spot, it's gonna need a rotation. I mean, you're gonna have to get permission from your husband or your wife. Well, I'm parking for the night, honey. I mean, it's I understand that there's civil diagrams, and radius that they can manipulate. But I've built too many houses to know that is not a workable solution if we indeed want to meet these parking requirements.
I mean, I think it's funky, obviously, but it's no worse than these condos that have tandem parking. It's the same exact thing. They have tandem parking, and it's a 2-bedroom condo unit, and they have to arrange. So, you know, if it's a 3-bedroom, it's a 3-bedroom unit, there's 3 spots, and it's just kind of funky to get out. So, I mean, it's not ideal, but I think people can deal with it as they do with all the tandem parking every place else.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a great project. I really like the design and I appreciate all the effort that's gone into it. I think they've met almost every other intent. It's a sticky little spot. I think that the problem always starts at the core, right? If it's developer driven, you look at the dimensions between the projects, they're 10 foot exactly to the inch. There's absolutely there's not any room to spare anywhere. So the manipulation options are extremely limited. I don't think for a second that that's going to work. I bet you on the first day that somebody's there, you're going to see tracks in the yard. I mean, like if we said there had to be a boulder right there at, you know, that little, at the curvy bit that would bang up your car on the way out, either they're going to not put the boulder in or somebody's going to get a dent.
Well,
But-
and also too, think about it. It's all because it's the best location for the visitor parking. The other units that have 4 bedrooms, are there gonna be 4 cars there? You know, it could be 2 adults and a teenager, and then when their friends come, you know, to visit, they're gonna park outside. They're not gonna park there and walk all the way around. So, you know, you gotta weigh everything.
The options studied, it's either funky for somebody who's a full-time parker theoretically, or funky for the visitor. I personally would lean towards the one that made it easier for the 2 full-time cars that are there.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that means it's gonna be less problematic. And then there's the visitor scenario, which is the shuffling or the whatever. You have to make arrangements, but we all have visitors and we all just, you know, you have to have the conversation. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that we can fix it unless we said there had to be something drastically different.
I feel too that, you know, the parking is something that we're always stingy on. It's only getting busier here. Think about it when there's snow. But I don't know what the solution is other than saying either good luck, hope the neighbors don't fight, or we need to see a different version because is my thoughts on. Personally, I don't know how we redo it. You can't have an additional curb cut for just the visitor parking. And looking at it, I'm like, I don't know why they don't reconfigure where it is to make it, but I'm not an architect. That's not my expertise on this panel. Let's call him in, let's ask him. Just kidding.
So-
Yeah.
I'm sorry, just to be clear, there's no on-street overnight parking, is that correct?
Correct.
And what's the alley parking rules?
There is, so the alley is a town right of way, and right now the town code is written that there's no parking allowed overnight on any town right of way, period.
Right. So, I mean, the only thing that I would add is that currently, we do have overnight parking, was it 3rd and Granite?
Correct.
But that's not a forever lot. Right.
And I do agree with Donna that most people are gonna park in each other's driveways. The majority of visitors are gonna park there, but this is a requirement of the code. And it has to meet the code. So our privy here tonight is to say, does that meet the tandem parking standards? And if we agree that it does, then I think this is, you know, an approvable project. But if we feel they need to rework it, that's kind of what we're deciding on, and where the bulk plane is, and if we're comfortable in those encroachments.
And if I may, I'll maybe clarify the parking question a little bit. First of all, do any one of the 3 options presented by the applicant for unit 2 and visitor parking work in your minds better than the other? Or option 4 is to take it as presented and have some sort of barrier there so that there is, so it eliminates that possibility of somebody backing right on out over. So there, I guess there's 4 options to consider for that parking.
I think the one that's presented is the best.
doesn't, and if one of those is the best, does it meet the intent of the code as it relates to the tandem park? That's the ultimate question on that.
I mean, I feel it's the homeowners that are being put kind of in the hardest position because the visitor isn't gonna be the one banging, or driving into the grass. But as we all know, we get habitual and then all of a sudden is their driveway widened by 5 feet because they've been driving over the curb for the last 5 years.
Well, and I think what's interesting about that unit, it's the smallest unit. It's facing second, so it's got a really good, curb appeal as opposed to the two, larger ones on the alley. So it's really kind of interesting. It's almost as if, it's a really, really good location. And to have the parking spot there, but it is centrally located. Personally, I don't think it's gonna be used all the time. So I think it's the best solution. It meets, as well, to me, it meets, the code.
Your guys' thoughts? Do you feel it meets the code?
I think on paper, they come pretty close. But in reality, if it's important to us that they don't drive over, that they stay within the right of way, then I think we might want to stipulate that bollards, which are ugly, or a decorative boulder that you can't move with a shovel.
Can we put that kind of stiff condition on it that?
I feel more comfortable with that personally because where I come out is, and I'm languishing over precedent and setting one.
Yeah.
And they referenced a building that I'm not sure, I don't think, I was part of, but anyway, it also isn't built yet. So we're sort of like bend. And I mean, cheers to the developers trying to do their best to make a good margin and a good project economically, but it's always stretching the code.
Yeah.
So I would feel better about Ira's suggestion.
So, I know they put a lot of work. I don't think we deny them. From a straw poll, if the condition was there, would this meet approval?
Yes.
All right, well,
And I do have some other comments.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
yeah, let's talk
I
about it.
wanted to thank you guys for reducing the bulk plane encroachments, but in some instances where there's a solid balcony and some of them are open, how do you feel about if those solid balconies were all cable rail like the rest of them, it would not look like it's encroaching the bulk plane as much. I mean, it isn't anything foreign. It's like on A 3.3, the left one has it open and the right one is solid, or vice versa. But I mean, that would just be something. I mean, I think the amount of the encroachment is not, has been reduced, so I think it's great. But if we felt, how do you feel about if all the railings were open, it would sort of lighten up the mass a little bit.
I'm mixed because I kind of like the aesthetic of the two, but I'm also kind of like, these are decks encroaching, pull them in.
Yeah.
I don't
No.
really like the bulk plane encroachments personally yes, I agree with Tim on that. There's all of this movement in between, but when you stand on these sites and you're like, yeah, but we're still pretty darn close. It's pretty shadowy and dark in here. When it's roof lines and it's impacting the size of rooms and whatnot, that's different. I feel like pull in the deck and have no bulk plane encroachment.
Well, I just thought, it's only, 2 feet, but still, to give the people the extra space, but then if it's not enclosed solid vertical,
Yeah.
and if it was open, it would have the illusion of being a little softer.
Yeah.
So that's just my comment. And then my only last comment is, that someone at the sketch plan had made the comment about interconnectivity of the paths, which they have addressed. I think it's really silly. Because most bikes are not coming out the front door, they're coming out the garage. But it's just I'd rather, if I was a homeowner, I'd rather have landscaping than another pathway, but it's just my opinion.
I will mention that one reason for the connectivity that should be required is that so the units that access the street can get to the trash enclosure. 'Cause right now, that's at the
They'd have to
northwest
walk
corner on
all
the alley, so they'd have to go up to the street, all the way around, all the way around, all the way around to put the trash in.
Any other thoughts on encroachments from either of you? Or-
Yeah, I mean, my 2 cents on the bulk plan is I'm good with it. I think they made strides to try and reduce. I think that they're accessory pieces of the design. And if you look at all of the elevations, there's things that just can't be turned into cable rail without sort of like segmenting the facade or really changing it quite a bit. I feel like it's cohesive. And, the bulk plan I think it's there to really protect against building mass, but accessory pieces are where I kind of come out okay. It's not like there's major roof lines or other things that are
I
blowing
agree.
out.
I mean, I'm fine
Just
with it, but I
personally.
just thought, what if?
I hear ya.
Just that if anyone else thought that.
Yeah, I feel like the aesthetic of their balances and weights and stuff it's really pretty what they have, They do a really nice.
Yes, it is.
So I see where you're coming from, but personally, I'm like, just get rid of them completely, but I understand that it's not how it works. Any other comments? We comfortable with putting on a condition? Do we have entertain a motion?
If I could suggest just an addition to the condition 5 that's as drafted in the staff report, to say something along the lines of the applicant shall evaluate the unit 2 driveway to ensure that the access to the garage and visitor parking spaces is functional and has added protection to ensure that cars don't back over or stay within the driveway in the permitted driveway. Something to that effect.
So it becomes a condition of permit.
Condition of this site plan approval, which will have to be shown on the building permit.
I don't know if I can.
Why don't you reiterate that?
If you wanna make a motion? Yeah,
I'll make a motion to approve.
okay, then I can second it, and then I can,
Yeah, second it, and then with the 5 conditions, including the addition that Don Rammer has read.
I'd like to make the motion and as stated with the addition of what Don said about the parking on number 2 driveway. With respect to file number MAJ-21-0006, I move that the recommended findings set forth in the January 28th staff report. Today's February. So January 28th staff report 2022 be made and the recommended conditions set forth therein be taken, and the planning commission hereby approves the request for the major site plan application for the proposed multifamily project located at 318 South Second Avenue, lots 13 through 16, block 24, Frisco Town Site.
Thank you. Cheryl, will you please call a vote?
Commissioner Withrow,
Yes.
Commissioner Tain,
Yes.
Commissioner Stabile, Commissioner Scupian,
Yes.
Commissioner Gleason.
Yes.
Thank you. We wish you guys the best of luck and we're excited to see your project. We will close agenda item number 1 at this time. Are we all good to move on before a break? All right, we'll break between the 2 work sessions. At this time, we are moving on to work session, to review the draft Frisco Complete Streets Plan. Susan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kelsey. We are excited to present this draft of the Complete Streets Plan to you guys tonight. As you know, we got started about 6 months ago, collecting existing conditions information and hosting a series of public meetings, which a lot of you guys we're lucky to have you attend that. So this is not completely new information to most of you, but it is sort of the the draft document. So from here, I'll just turn it over to Tool Design. I think we have Aaron and Sagar on the line. Not quite sure which one of them is going to take the lead, and I'll let them share their screen so they can lead you through. We in particularly are hoping to get your feedback on the new cross sections for the street typologies, the policy recommendations, as well as the proposed project prioritization list.
And also for the record, I'll note that Commissioner Lesmes has joined the Planning Commission meeting online, and Commissioner Stabile has rejoined the meeting after recusing on the last item.
All right, we'll take them.
Thank you. That sounds good. I think, yeah, so my name is Sagar Anta with Tool Design, and Aaron is also with Tool Design, and we are really, really glad to present this. And if you go to the next slide, we will have about 20 minutes to present the plan, and we'll try to, we'll have a lot to cover. So we'll try to go a little quickly and spend more time in the discussion part of it, which will be the next 25 minutes. We'll have questions and we'll discuss all the project types as well as the project list. And really the goal of the meeting today is to kind of introduce the draft plan to you and then make sure that you are aware of the process that we went through to get there, and then get a feedback on, like I mentioned earlier, get a feedback on the initial types of streets as well as the project list. So the plan is really divided into 4 chapters, and we'll go through this fairly quickly, especially the first introduction and what we know. And we'll try to spend more time on the last 2 chapters, where we are going and how we get there. So moving on. So in introduction chapter, we really talk about the guiding principles and the vision of why this plan was created and how it really follows from the previous community plan and how it really jives with what the other plan says. So this is not created in a vacuum. This is the next steps in operationalizing the vision of the community that was drawn in previous years. So we want to make sure that we have that foundation for this plan. So that's what the introduction of the plan introduction chapter does, and then it goes through again the planning process and then how to use the plan section. So on developing the plan, as Susan mentioned, we did an existing condition assessment. We obviously got all the data on the modes, on the traffic volume, as well as the bicycle and the pathway facility type. And then on the data collection piece of it, I just want to, we'll get into that a little bit later, but we did a traffic count both during when there was the promenade open and then when it was closed as well. And the main bulk of the conceptualization of the plan itself happened during the 3 days that was the design charrette, where we really, as some of you know, we spent a lot of time with the community to flush out the issues on each of these streets and try to come up with some initial cross sections and initial solutions, and which is again later on was refined as a part with the PMT, with the plan, with the project management team, which included the public works as well as representative from the council and then the representative from the commission as well. So it was refined after the design charrette. So yeah, so going quickly, I talked about that a little bit. We did a walkthrough with town staff. We did some counts, some infrastructure analysis, and a couple of things that I forgot to mention earlier was we also reviewed the previous plan and policies, like I mentioned, and then also the town code, like how the town codes needs to be updated to really implement this plan that we have created. design charrette, a little bit getting into a little bit more detail. It was held in September. About overall, I think it was about 150 participants. And we really spent a lot of time talking to people throughout the day. And we had 2 public meetings, beginning of the week, and then at the end of the week on Thursday to present the initial ideas. And we really had one-on-one meeting with a lot of folks as well, and the fire department, as well as the police and the public works department. So we had one-on-one meeting as well as a open studio sessions. Just want to mention that. Moving on. I'm sorry, I might be going a little fast, but we have a lot to cover in 20 minutes. So if you don't mind. So then we had the initial cross sections that was up for public for their comments. It was open for about a little less than a month. And we received 75 respondents participated with 246 comments. So that's quite a bit of comments we received on the cross sections. And we really looked at all those comments, and there was a lot of emphasis on pedestrian safety, providing a multimodal option. Parking and access was another highlight of the comments. And also the traffic on Granite was definitely one of the key comments that was received during I want to say during both the design charrette as well as this refinement process. And then if you go to the next slide. So let's go a little bit of existing condition analysis. That's fine. Yeah. So we synthesized the previous plans. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the previous plans really were the foundation of this plan. And we sort of try to succinctly summarize what those plans try to accomplish. And it was really these 4 key themes that came out of our review was the community really wants to improve quality of life and community prosperity, want to promote walking, biking, and other modes, and increase safety for all ages and ability, and improve access to key destinations. So those were the 4 themes that came out of previous plan, and we made sure that that was carried through in this complete streets plan as well. Next slide. So for the infrastructure assessment, we looked at the bicycle network, which right now all the pathways sort of end. There's almost like a donut hole in the middle of, except for the main street, shared street, and technically a facility. But there's no bicycle facility in the project area that we're looking at, which was, by the way, didn't mention, is go from Madison Avenue to Highway 9, and then from Granite to Galena. So that was our study area. So there was an incomplete network we identified. And then on the pedestrian network, obviously there are some good sidewalk on Main Street and on some of the north-south avenues, but those sidewalks are missing on Galena and then on Granite as well for the most part. And here is the traffic count that we collected at 4 different locations during the promenade when the Main Street was closed for vehicle traffic, and then afterwards in November when it was open. And you can see that from the traffic volume perspective, Granite Street definitely, it's almost like 2 to 3 times more traffic when Main Street is closed, which, I think a lot of people felt that and was definitely a concern during our charrette. But also what was interesting is that because of that higher volume, the speed was actually lower, on the when the Main Street Promenade was open. But when the Main Street was open, the speed increases in November, as you see. The volume decreases on Granite Street, but the speed increases quite a bit. So there is a inverse relationship between volume and speed happening on Granite. So that was an interesting observation and something that we tried to address in this plan. And then Aaron's going to talk about the next phases.
Great, thank you, Sagar. And my name is Aaron Villaria. I'm a project planner with Tool Design, the consultant working on the project as well. All right, so I want to jump into the chapters 3 and 4, which is really the where are we going. This is, I would say, really the meat of the recommendations, and then of course the implementation strategy. So looking at chapter 3, so this is the design framework and street types. So the place that we started with the design framework was really thinking about what the goals were in the community plan and what that synthesis we did from previous plans, and how do we operationalize that when looking at downtown streets. And so the place that we started was recommending this modal hierarchy, which really sort of takes those guiding principles of mobility, of inclusive community, of thriving economy, of sustainability, and tries to translate them into a design approach or framework. And so it starts with placing people who are walking and rolling at the top, and saying that when you approach a street design project, that these are the users that we should be prioritizing. And the reason for this is because everybody's pedestrian at some point in their trip, you know, especially if they're accessing downtown Frisco, they're walking to businesses, they're walking to residences, they're rolling through the area, and specifically emphasizing priority for people with disabilities, people using mobility devices. That was a piece of feedback that we heard during public engagement too, was the need to really think through what does disability access look like in the downtown area. The next level down, so starting with people walking and rolling, and then the next level down is looking at people bicycling and riding transit, that again, really emphasizing access to those destinations in downtown and making it feel safe and comfortable for people biking, accessing the summit stage, accessing regional destinations. What does that experience feel like, and how do you promote that experience? That recreation and active mobility are really core features and assets of Frisco and downtown Frisco, and so how do you emphasize that? The next one down is of course people moving freight, people accessing the curb, that this is really the lifeblood that pumps through and makes downtown Frisco a vibrant place, is being able to access businesses and households, and really that short-term curbside piece. And then finally, people driving, and especially people driving through, are sort of at the bottom of the pyramid, that the vocation of downtown Frisco is really about getting there and being there and making that a more vibrant place, and that driving through was a point of discomfort that we heard about during public engagement, that cut through traffic on Granite Street is something that people were noticing, and we hope to address with this Complete Streets plan. And how that really translates to street design is, we like to think of it as designing from the outside in. So starting at the destination, starting at where people work and live and shop and dine, and starting from that frontage and thinking about how do you meet each of the users in the modal hierarchy as you move in towards the center of the street. So what does the sidewalk and pedestrian interface look like? What does curbside access look like? What bicycling and transit facilities are provided to promote safe and comfortable access? And then finally, what does vehicle mobility look like? And so starting by accommodating those users on the edge of the street, making sure that you're continuously accommodating safe and comfortable usage as you move your way in. And so that's really the heart of the design framework. We also included guidance and some recommendations around how to really make that safe for people who picked up this Complete Streets plan, and how to make it comfortable. And so starting with some recommendations about how designers should use design speed, how should they think about risk reduction and creating a safe and comfortable streetscape in their assumptions about design, and setting target speed and design speed and posted speed all at a recommended 20 miles an hour in the downtown area, which is a safe and comfortable speed for dense environments. And then making some recommendations around design vehicles. So this shows a design vehicle and a control vehicle, and we wanted to offer some guidance and recommendations to say that small single unit trucks, the SU30 truck, should be the design vehicle for downtown streets, which is the most commonly accommodated vehicle, that when you're thinking about lane widths and intersection design and curb radii, that this is the largest vehicle that should be able to turn one lane to one lane. And then if larger vehicles are there, they're accommodated, they're the control vehicle, and they can still make these turns, but they're allowed to use the full roadway to do that, and they should be making them slowly. And what that does is sort of unlock space, so you don't have to design these giant curves and these long crossings. You can really create more pedestrian space and unlock more space. So some recommendations around design approaches for whether it's city staff or consultants or private individuals when they approach downtown streets, that they have more guidance about how to really emphasize safety and comfort for people bicycling and walking and taking transit and driving. The plan also establishes new street classifications for downtown. And so this is basically the street types adhere to one of these 5 street classifications. And so each one is assigned, and then it creates a new standard cross section and then some guidance around designing for each of these street types. So Granite Street is designated as a downtown collector street. All the north-south avenues are downtown local commercial streets, and then some of them have pathway designations, which we'll get to. Galena Street is a downtown local residential, so it has more of a local street function. There's some contextual information about what kind of land uses you see. And then finally, the alleys are designated as downtown alleys, and their function really is local access. And then Main Street, of course, is its own important street and has its own important classification. But the plan affirms the design and the reconstruction done in the Step Up Main Street project. So it's not further emphasized in this that we've worked with the town and feel that this is at the present moment meeting its need as a complete street. So we wanted to affirm that design in the project. So to go through the street types, I will kind of run through these to make sure to stay on track. So the way that these are structured is that there's a cross-section, recommended cross-section for each street type. And then there's some information about how to interface with what design elements should be there and how to connect with existing conditions in some places where there's already infrastructure in place. So for instance, in the downtown collector street, there's information about how many travel lanes and how wide should the roadway be, and what does a typical, allocation of parking look like, that we are recommending that parallel parking be provided on the north side of the street generally. And then there's a sidewalk on the north side. The sidewalk is generally configured on the side closer to Main Street, as it's anticipated that that's where the pedestrian circulation will be. And then recommends a pathway on the south side of the street that is a multi-use pathway. It offers guidance on what kinds of parking may be accommodated on the street. And in the case of the collector street, there's a mix of both short-term parking and long-term, so both resident and local access. And then there's a plan view within each one that sort of shows how different design elements can be configured within the street. And so to try to give some information for people picking up the plan to think about how to assemble this kit of parts into a cohesive streetscape. And the goal of this is to create a connected and cohesive downtown environment by providing some guidance and guardrails around street design. The local residential street, which again only applies to Galena Street in the downtown area. So again, this is facing the same direction. So a sidewalk is created on the south side of the street, which is the side closer to Main. And so that's the recommendation. The pathway is on the north side of the street to create, again, this cohesive pathway network in the downtown area. Design speed is lower than on the collector street. There's anticipated that some long-term parking may be provided on one side of the street, on the side closer to Main. And then again, freight and loading is encouraged to move to the alley. And again, this is a plan view illustration of how different elements might fit together. So this is the local commercial street. So these are the north-south avenues, and specifically there are certain streets in the multimodal network in chapter 4 that are designated as pathway streets. So these are streets with the Frisco pathway on it, and so this street type applies to places where there's desires or where we're recommending that there's bicycling and pedestrian access provided. So again, parking is given more prominence as there's a lot of desire to access Main Street from these north-south avenues. And so there's some guidance around parking regulation, driveway frequency, and then of course design speed should be lower as this is really serving access to Main Street needs. And again, plan view configuration, and this one specifically, it includes Main Street to sort of show how different sides of Main Street line up with one another. One design piece that I will note, based on a comment that we received from the PMT, was to have parking generally sort of going, serving off of Main Street. So for instance, if you were on Main Street and you were looking for parking and you turned onto an avenue, that the head-end parking should serve the direction traveling off Main Street, with the assumption that people will park and then walk back. And then finally, the downtown alleys, which really emphasize their prominence around short-term loading and access. The recommendation is not to provide, at least in the long term, any long-term parking in the alleys, that these should really be back-of-house access, and that should really serve what's existing in the town code and design manual. Very low design speeds, very low frequency. It's more of a shared environment, with the assumption that the primary roles of this are back-of-house access, and then of course fire and emergency services access. So maintaining clear and traversable paths for them as well. And so this is just a plan view configuration. I'm going to zoom through this. There's also an urban design palette that's provided in the plan, and this is to provide a menu of materials and design options that can be provided, or that, so that you have a unified urban design approach for the downtown area, and that developers can employ along with the town to provide furniture and amenities both within and adjacent to the right-of-way that sort of match and promote that cohesive downtown Frisco feel. And finally, the implementation strategy. First of all, this section recommends changes to the town code to comply with the Complete Streets Plan. So there's a menu of these that I apologize, it's a wall of words, but you can review this in the draft plan, and we look forward to discussing it. But these are some recommended changes that can help put the plan into action. This section also recommends a multimodal network. So Sagar showed that map of sort of the gap in the downtown area right now. And so this is a recommendation of the series of streets that should be given designation as Frisco Pathway Streets, and thus have multimodal accommodations, specifically have bicycling and walking accommodations. And this is to connect to both the regional rec path and the larger network of Frisco Pathway streets. So streets that are on this, for instance, we see that the avenues that this block of 7th and then 3rd and 5th Avenue are recommended to be Frisco Pathway streets. And so that downtown local commercial street designation with the pathway applies to these streets. Additionally, this final chapter prioritizes projects. This doesn't mandate that projects be implemented in a specific order. However, it just applies some metrics to help guide efforts in the coming months and years for the town. And so it really divides into into 3 buckets, but 2 overarching buckets, which is really quick build projects, things that can be done in the very immediate term and can address immediate needs, and typically use lighter materials, and can be piloted more often. And then transformative projects are things that are sort of longer efforts, might require more capital planning or grants. Main Street is a good example of requires full depth construction, and thus are more transformative. And so we created these criteria to help prioritize these projects. Does it qualify for multiple funding, or is it likely to qualify for multiple funding sources? Does it have public support? Does it align with adopted plans previously existing? Does it have expressed community support during this process? Did staff identify it as a priority? And then does it provide protection for vulnerable users, specifically people bicycling and walking and rolling in the street? And then finally, does it connect to that multimodal network? And so this is a map of all the projects. That blue is things that can be done in the near term. Orange is things that can be done sort of in the medium term that are more transformative. And then green is long-term transformative projects. And so I will just run through these. So some examples of things that can be done potentially in the very near term are, we heard a lot of public comments and feedback around the operations and traffic control pattern on Granite Street. And so we recommended a stop sign optimization project that requires traffic analysis and very light construction to address that in the near term, and to focus on safety and predictability and operations. And then things that can be, some other examples are, I'll just show these, realignments of, say, Granite and Madison, that there's a turn that the public cited as being stressful at the moment. And so this was a design concept developed during the design charrette, just as, cited as a location that could be studied and treated with a quick build approach. In the medium term, there's some design work that can be completed to sort of start to unify these projects and develop a longer term vision, and really put pen to paper to build out some of the cross sections and plan views in this plan. So Granite Street project to go from 10 to 30% design, as well as some studies that we recommended based on public feedback. So a transit service alternative study that a number of folks during the design charrette and the public feedback survey cited a desire for additional transit service downtown, so studying what that might look like. Downtown parking policy and management is forever a challenge, and so a study to understand what are some of the future options around parking policy in the downtown area. And then in the long term, what are the complete street reconstruction projects that can be done to really deliver on a complete and connected and active downtown Frisco street network. And then finally, I won't speak to them, but there are also appendices that we included, including the existing conditions report, some draft design details for Frisco pathways to offer additional guidance on how pathways can be constructed, and then the prioritization methodology. And so just wanted to show a schedule of sort of what's next. So the draft plan is posted on the town website, and then we'll be talking to town council as well next week. And so we're planning to collect public comments for 2 weeks, so through February 18th, and then return with complete, or spend a few weeks resolving comments, making sure that we address any requests from this commission and from town council, and then finally submit the final plan in mid-March. So with that, thank you, and I think we can go into discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Sagar and Aaron. We really appreciate all your work and Susan's hard work and the community stepping up to be a part of this. I'm sure we all are very passionate about certain intersections and stop signs. So we're really appreciative of all your work. So thank you for that. We haven't done a work session in person for a long time. I'm not sure some of you have been a part of it. It's kind of informal. Just talk, ask your questions, feedback, engage with the presenters, with Susan. And we'll get rolling with Andy to start us off.
Thanks, Kelsey. First of all, guys, I just want to echo Kelsey. You guys have done a great job, I think, with all the information that was coming at you, certainly in those sessions in the town buildings. You were getting a lot of information, and I think you did a great job putting it all in there. I'm a little bit curious, and Susan, forgive me, I'm going to bring this up because I'm curious. I want to hear you guys answer about Main Street. Going into this, I kind of thought of Main Street as being one of the issues that we needed to address. I've seen multiple conflicts between the parking and the traffic on Main Street, and then giving people the impression that they're on a bike path by painting bike symbols on the road, but not telling people in cars how to adjust their behavior because they're on a bike path as well. I'm curious what you guys think of as what do we do about Main Street? How do we deal with that? I know this plan really focuses on Granite and Galena and a lot of the cross streets, but I'm curious about Main Street and if you have any recommendations for what we do with the sharrows and the parking.
Yeah, I can start there. And we definitely got that comment a lot, especially with some of the pathways ending right on Madison. And, most of the people are riding on the sidewalk. And there is a lot of conflict between pedestrian and sidewalk, pedestrian and bicycle. And I think one thing that we discussed during the design charrette as well as later on was trying the back in parking. So instead of a head in parking that you currently have, because once you have the back in parking, when you driving out of the spot, you'll have a lot better visibility of the bicyclists on the road, and hopefully that'll help improve the safety of the operation of both bicyclists and the vehicles. So that's something that we discussed, and I believe on our Main Street, because there was so much effort made on the Main Street already to reconstruct that. We didn't want to make a wholesale change to say, oh, you should do a parallel parking or you should do something else, because I know how important parking is to the community, and it'll significantly reduce the number of parking if you go parallel parking. But if you go head out parking instead of a head in right now, then the number of parking spaces stays the same. But it is a lot of learning curve. It is very different than how a lot of people park, especially with the tourists. And, so there was a lot of confusion about whether that, how that is going to get implemented. But from the operation and safety perspective, I think that's worth a try to see whether that's going to help improve safety for both pedestrian and bicyclists, as well as drivers.
So the recommendation for now is to keep the bikes and the cars sharing the road down Main Street and not provide any additional instruction or signage for how to behave. I guess we're just going to leave it the way it is for now.
I'm sorry, I was writing something. Would you?
I guess the plan is to just leave Main Street the way it is for now. Yeah. I sure would love to see that get fixed at some point. That's my comment.
I think it's only getting more and more contentious as people come in.
I'm not sure if back in parking's the way I am free, that I think there's a lot of confusion there, but I feel like we either need to embrace the bikes on Main Street and make it more obvious to the cars they're in a bike lane, or to find a different place for the bikes to go. But I think that there's an inherent conflict there with bikes and parking and traffic on Main Street that needs to be addressed. I look forward to when we can address that.
Yeah, I think it seems a little short-sighted to forget about our Main Street, and focus so much on Granite. And I mean, the problems are all, they spread throughout all of the streets, but I agree that there's not a lot of emphasis on Main Street.
Well, and I totally understand. We just redid Main Street.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to go tearing Main Street up right now. That's why I was looking for some sort of short-term solution, whether it's signage to let cars know they're driving down a bike path or bikes to know how to behave because the cars don't always see them. But, you know, hopefully we can address that in the future, but.
Yeah, jump right in.
You know, and, you know, that was all brought up when the original Step Up Main Street, Mary Hart design with, you know, trees and hardscape and a dedicated bike lane, which then would narrow Main Street a little bit so that people, you know, wouldn't do, you know, U-turns and stuff like that. And council at the time said, no. So that's, you know, that's why. So it's, you know, it's exciting that this presentation and all this work is so detailed, but it's a shame that it's everything every place else. It's very, you know, it's very ambitious, but it's, you know, it's the right thing to do, especially if it will take some cars off of Main Street. But I can't see the majority of people using bike lanes on Granite.
Yeah.
You know, that's.
Well, they want to bike and see the shops or the restaurants. They're shopping essentially on their bike, you know,
Yeah.
window shopping.
Yeah.
They're seeing what's
Yeah.
happening. They want to be a part of the mix. They came off of
On
the
sidewalks,
marina
on-
or,
But on the sidewalks.
yeah.
So, I mean,
Or sidewalk out to the street, back on the sidewalk, whichever is more convenient.
yeah.
Is this gonna
I
come to
don't-
a vote?
So it's open to your comments now. So it's
Can I
open to
make a
just-
comment?
You may, let me just answer Kelsey's question.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
I was just gonna reiterate that it's open for your comments and suggestions now, and I think this is good feedback. And maybe there are some things that we can include, working with Tool, Sagar and Aaron to try to develop some recommendations that can start to make some maybe short-term.
But don't we
improvements
need
for
to
Maine.
change the code language?
So part of this plan is that it's got the recommendations for making code changes. So the first step will be completing this plan with all of your wonderful feedback, adopting this plan as a master plan document, just like we did for the community plan, and then implementing the recommendations from the plan. So the code changes are one of their big recommendations, and putting those into the code will mean that it becomes part of our development review process.
Perfect. Lena, floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Great work on this. I feel like if I'm a bicyclist, the last thing I want to do is be on Main Street. So just to comment on that comment, and for me, Granite Street is really needs some love in this from this perspective. So I really like the focus on Granite and Galena and the side streets or the avenues, because I think Main Street is, yeah, it's not perfect, but you're right, there was a lot of work that was done on it, 6 years ago? So I just feel like Granite Street really needs attention, and so I appreciate the work that you guys have done. I do have a question, and you might have said this, and I might have just missed it, but in your list of recommendations, Granite Street is the top priority, right? The entire length of Granite Street? Is that right, or did I get that wrong?
And feel free to pipe in Aaron or Sagar on that. Or Susan.
I think
Yeah.
Aaron is gonna jump on.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So Granite Street is listed as the priority. So the way that it's broken down, and one of the things that we wanted to do was sort of break it into bite-sized pieces, I suppose, is the way to think about it. So Granite is the top priority in a few of the quick build projects, doing the street sign optimization, doing some of the intersection realignments. And then for the full reconstruction, we actually recommended the medium term, to do the design first for the entirety of the street. And the reason for that, and so there are some sections that you can do reconstruction sort of in the medium and long term, but having the design sort of ready to go would enable, you know, whether there's redevelopment happening or sort of when funding becomes available to do the larger reconstruction projects, you would have the design ready to go and on the shelf. And so it is the top priority, and it's sort of like a little nuance because it's broken down into different buckets.
Thank you. And a quick question for Don or Susan. Just because I have no idea, is this a priority for the town council, and are they starting to allocate funding towards this work? I guess I'm just curious if this is really going to happen anytime soon.
For sure. So this has been on their strategic plan list for many years now. Probably 3 years they've been budgeting for it. They just needed a good plan to go forward. And so we kept hitting pause, I think, and this was sort of the step we needed to take to give ourselves a plan of action moving forward. But I do feel like it's a priority. Obviously, they reassess their goals every year moving forward. So hopefully this plan will make it in time to be considered for next year's budget.
Yeah, I'll add a
Awesome.
little bit to that. Back in 2019, when the town council first adopted their strategic plan, it was rebuild Granite Street was, I think, the strategic plan priority that was listed. But I think there was a missing piece there, and this is where Susan and I, over the course of the past year, and COVID put a pause to a lot of plans as well in 2020 and 2021. But that gave us an opportunity to say, okay, what really is the goal? Where does Granite fit into the bigger picture? Do we just reconstruct Granite without having an idea on how that fits? And that's where we recommended to council that we adjust the scope a little bit to really focus on how does Granite fit into downtown, and how really take a bigger, more holistic look at the downtown area and how transportation is working in the downtown. And that's the result of, or this plan is resulting from that.
And certainly closing a main street and moving traffic and then taking away parking, testing what our limitations are, I think was a great opportunity during COVID. And got great feedback from the town on parking and all those hot button issues. What are your thoughts, Patrick?
So, you know, I definitely think, you know, Granite and Galena are two great opportunity streets to make something that becomes a secondary set of corridors to Main Street. There's a lot of good opportunity there. But I had a fundamental question about Granite. So when you, let's see, I'm not looking at the screen, right? I'm looking at my version of it. But anyway, the character, I think I wrote down the identification plan of the different streets. It showed Granite going all the way to Summit Boulevard, I believe. And that really kind of isn't sort of the case anymore when you consider commercial traffic. So I'm thinking about the commercial traffic, the new roundabout, and the way all this stuff plays together, because Granite was sort of a commercial throughway from 70 to cut over to Breck. And I just like to hear somebody talk about, are we trying to tell commercial traffic that doesn't happen anymore? Do they go down to 203, they get off and they stay on major roads? Because that has a big impact in my perspective on the character of what Granite Street wants to become and what that cross section should look like. I mean, if there's big trucks ripping down it and you put, you know, nice little trees and a bike path and stuff, still nobody's going to want to use it. But if it's not that anymore, there's a way to deter from that. That's different. So could you, you know, cross-pollinate CDOT's move with this?
That's very interesting.
Aaron or Sagar, would you like to address
Yeah.
that? I think that's certainly a good point, and we had some discussions on that as well.
We did. I'll let Sagar something.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we definitely had a conversation about that. And one of the thing is what we're trying to do is that right now, because Granite looks more like a rural street with just asphalt and gravel, that, you know, it feels a lot more sort of welcoming to the trucks. But hopefully with the improvements that this is recommended, where we will have curbs on the north side, it'll become much more urban feeling. And then, you know, it'll discourage, there we have also added more stop signs on Granite Street to help reduce the speed to calm the traffic. So those are the elements in the design that we are hoping will discourage cut through traffic that you mentioned. And the other thing I think Susan can probably elaborate on this was we did have a conversation about whether we require talking to CDOT or even Google Maps and others that the trucks use 203 exit and not cut through a main street. So that's another more of a policy and a programmatic conversation to have in terms of trying to make sure that there's no cut through traffic. But so there are two solutions to that. One is definitely programmatic, and the design solution or design that we're recommending right now is hopefully, because as you know, Google and all, it always shows the fastest, like the time to get through to a destination. So hopefully this design will, make sure that this is not the fastest route for the trucks to cut through, and they will instead use a 203. So.
Right. Town of Frisco could employ or somebody to explore geofencing though, and that would start to inform the digital bots that run MapQuest and run Google Maps and all the other things. We've done it on other projects, but you can do that plus signage, I think, to try and help dissuade people from that being a plausible alternative to cut through. So I would just say that all digital remedies should be looked at as well as physical signage and whatever else we're going to employ.
The one thing I want to be careful of is discourage people from taking granted. More of that cut-through traffic on the main street.
Yeah.
Like that's
Huge point.
the whole point, is we want to get people off the main street, but if we make granite, if we put stop signs up and down it and we slow people down, then all of a sudden people coming from Vail and going to Breckenridge are going to decide Main Street's the best way to go, and the trucks are going to start to go north. So we just need to make sure that doesn't become the fastest option.
Well,
All of a sudden, Main Street's the better option.
and now with the roundabout there.
Yeah.
It's backing up to turn, when you're going north, turn left on to Main Street. So you have to go around the roundabout, which, is, I feel really, empowered. It's, hey, am I gonna make it through there? Are people gonna stop?
Jet
But-
onto 8th Avenue now,
But what
rocket
I'm-
ships.
okay, but what I'm saying is that with that, because of the roundabout, it's can't go onto Granite, so you have to go this way. And so I mean, it's,
Or you just take Main Street.
yeah, or Main Street.
I think you make both streets slow. Like there's no good option to get through Frisco. We're a slow, small town. There's equal, stop signs on Main Street and equal stop signs on Granite. Like,
That's 203. I think
Yeah.
that's the point that Sagar made, as well as Patrick is making, with use whatever methods are at our disposal to encourage and almost maybe even push commercial truck traffic to use 203 if it's heading to Breckenridge. And only, so truck traffic is only local traffic. Right now, Granite has been designated or is currently designated as a truck route. Maybe there's opportunities to adjust that as well. And certainly we agree that we don't want commercial traffic on Main Street.
let's hear your thoughts.
Well, Patrick took the wind out of my sails. I mean, because you come from Copper back here, there's a big green sign at 201 to go to Breckenridge.
Yeah.
So that's the signage part of it. I mean, and then whenever we have events, concerts in the park, whatever it is, we are always pushing everybody onto Granite. So that's part of our lifestyle, is using Granite like that. So I don't know how we're going to change that reality, that we need a safety valve for trucks to get off of Main Street. We need a safety valve where we're pushing everybody, and we're not going to push them onto Galena no matter what you do. That doesn't work. And Granite still works to get to 9 and turn south, even though I always feel like that's north.
Yeah, south that
I
goes
mean,
up.
But in any event, so I'm not really clear how to change that reality that we need. And so many people in our community know that's already there. I mean, you don't need a sign at the roundabout saying, here's a quicker way to get to Copper.
Yeah,
You know, just go 8th past the fire station, go down Granite and, you know, so I think that that's a reality that we have. The other reality is bikes are on Main Street and they're staying on Main Street.
well, that's where they get the rentals.
Well, that's where they get the
And
rentals.
they try them out on the
Yeah.
sidewalk.
But more than that, it is interesting to be, I mean, to put the bikes on Granite is for those people that have a destination.
Locals are gonna use it.
They're gonna get off of Main and go.
Yeah.
But we encourage tourism.
Mhm.
And for one to think we're not a tourist destination, we're in the closet. So bikes on Main are gonna continue to be a reality. And we have to look at, you know, where we're gonna carve a bike lane. It's really hard to put it next to the curbs, you know, to move parking out a little bit like they do in the cities. That's what they do. They put it next to, but so many of our intersections, the curb comes out. I forget that. Patrick will give me a word for it, but it has a little doodad, you know, where, so.
Do that.
It's a doodad.
Just
It's a bulb out.
Yeah. So the other thing I was, in the words that I just heard, we talked about pathways versus sidewalks. And I heard that there was a consideration, let's just forget about where's, you know, somewhere the pathway or the sidewalk, forgive me, would be closer to Main. And I'm depending on whether you're on Galeno or you're on this, one or the other, which is closer to Main. But I'm wondering, being we are where we are, the south side of the street melts snow better. And I'm
The
just
north
won-
side of Maine.
North side.
The north side
Yeah.
gets the south sun. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that consideration, I stand corrected. But maybe we should be considering that whether it's the pathway or the sidewalk should be in the sunny side, not proximity to Main. I mean,
That's a good idea.
Because you gotta think snow removal too, if we have a path that we're clearing like 2nd, 5th, and 8th.
right,
If those come in as bike paths, then are we inviting people to bike onto Main there, you know, where it stops after Granite? If we put that path onto Granite, we have snow removal, you know, that's an additional snow removal, including Main Street. And then 3 bike paths and now a 4th on Granite.
Yeah.
So, I mean, using our powers of the sun to help us and benefit us is a
If you-
great
I mean,
point.
If you have a north driveway versus a southern exposed driveway,
Huge difference.
it's a huge difference. You don't have to see the chiropractor.
Yeah.
If I can piggyback on with the
Yeah.
snow. So driving down Granite today, coming here on the south side, actually on both sides, but mostly on the south side. And there's a lot of houses with curb cuts. The snow piles that are 10 feet tall go right to the pavement.
Yeah.
Where's all that snow gonna go?
in
Yeah.
Trucks and they bring it to the storage.
I also
areas.
feel the trucks and the buses are not as frequent as we make them sound. And it's the people going 45 down Granite that are on a rush to get to Copper or Breckenridge or wherever it may be, that I think they need to be geographically directed and doing that, but they're more in the middle of the night throughout the day. There's not just a stream of semis going down Granite. There's a stream of cars going 50.
Right,
Multiple things. And I think regardless, if you just slow everybody down everywhere,
right.
there's just no cut through,
Yeah.
you know?
If I could make, piggyback on, not piggyback, go back to the point, they were talking about back-in parking. I'm just gonna tell you right now, that is not in the skill set of drivers. And then secondly, what is going in that direction is more and more and more cars, and not if you have one, have these backup cameras
Yeah,
that are unbelievable.
yeah.
They almost tell you bikers a block away.
Mhm.
So I think that we're gonna see more of those and nobody's gonna know how to back in
And
park.
then in 5 years, we're gonna have to redo this, to put charging stations
Yeah,
everywhere.
because the back in parkers can start to learn how to back in parking on the guest spot on lot number 2. All right, so all that aside, I really appreciate the work that's being done. And I looked at that time schedule where they want to be approved by March. I would only say I love expediency, and I just love that things get done in such a nice fashion of time. However, our population, more than half aren't here. And I'm just wanted to know how we're going to reach out to people that pay taxes here, how they could know that, I mean, rather than it's on our website, you should have looked. I mean, this is pretty important. We're trying to make streetscapes for the future. And many of our people ain't here.
They were here over the summer and during some of the community gathering.
Yeah,
times.
200 people go look there. I think we have more.
But
than
I
200.
mean, the reality of second home ownership is you have to take that second layer of
Yeah.
I
informing
just wanna be on
yourself.
record
And
recognizing.
I agree that we are a second homeowner community as well. You can only vote in one place, you know?
We are planning to outreach to everyone who's on the town council and planning commission email list, as well as the emails that we captured from that design charrette in the fall. So we will be, you'll probably see them blasting out some emails.
I do love your thought on inclusiveness, but I also think that you, as a homeowner, you need to be aware of your surroundings and.
It's something we've struggled with for a long time. How do we get community input?
Right.
It's really difficult to get people to weigh in. You get the 200 people that show up to these charrettes. And other than that, it's hard to, is it a survey in Summit Daily? Is it something on KSMP? It's hard to get the people.
Hard.
And
agree.
I think you guys have done a really good job on this one and trying as hard as you could to get people to be included. So.
Or two, you have plenty of time for your comments, so.
Okay, sorry.
At any time.
The only thing I have to say is for me, I do feel like directing bicyclists to Granite Street makes a lot of sense. There's way too much going on Main Street and too many conflicts. I just don't think that bicyclists belong on Main Street. So that's just my opinion. And again, like I said already, I really think Granite Street needs some attention and some love. It can be improved dramatically. So I hope that, your plan gets put into place and we actually do it fully in support.
I have some questions. I've got a few questions. On some of these downtown collective streets and even along Granite and Galena, you're depicted trees in the right of way. Why is the plan showing trees in the right of way when they can't be there? Okay, this is one question. It also, in the report that we went over in our packet, that it was talking about the bike parking rings. Where, number one, where are those going to be potentially, this is getting into detail, but things to think about is they're so impractical that because currently we have the multi-bike racks and there aren't enough of those.
Yeah, they're
So
loaded.
if you're cutting them down to be single use, where are those gonna go? I mean, so the bike parking is, still gonna be an issue. What is the Main Street Madison traffic circle?
Main Street, Madison.
Is listed, and even in the phased planning, chart, it's talked about the Main Street Madison traffic circle. So if someone can answer that.
I don't, you had the picture up earlier. I don't know if you guys can speak to that. Improvements at Madison. It's really Madison and Granite.
But is it really going to be a traffic circle? And if it is, then that's gonna, take away parking. I mean, so it can't really be a traffic circle like a roundabout. So I was just sort of curious about that nomenclature. And then with,
Sorry, do you want Sagar to answer that?
sure.
Yeah, I think we were thinking of the traffic circle at Main and Madison to reduce the speed coming into town, because there is quite a high speed traffic coming into from the west. And so we're trying to use that as, because there is a different character of downtown on the east, east of Madison versus west of Madison. So it also allows for the traffic circle to be more of a, hey, now you're entering the different character, different main street. So that was the couple of reasons. So one was the speed, one was the different change in the land uses on each side of Madison, and also because there is the trail connection that ends at Madison, and there was a lot of questions about the safety of crossing Madison, because vehicles are coming on Madison and making a right, coming on Main and making a right on Madison to go to Granite. And I think that we're trying to make sure that that happens at a slow speed and that people can have a better visibility. So that was one of the reasons that we were recommending a traffic circle at that location.
Hey, Don, is that 100% a town of Frisco choice?
It actually is, yeah. Main Street is a town street. CDOT, the CDOT right of way was turned over to the town several years ago.
Well, and I think it's interesting because there used to be a really nice island further west on Main Street with the Frisco sign, and it really was welcoming. But then, the town back then took it out. Just a couple other questions. The pedestrian network, it shows it in Galena Alley, but not in Granite Alley. Why? Who's probably?
Which map is that one?
It's towards.
Oh, so that's a description actually. If you look at the legend, and I'll pull up what page it is in the plan, it's actually a description of physical infrastructure and sort of what's there. So when we started out, so it's not that.
Well, there's two maps showing the alley, and one of them, it was, I'm doing this from
Yeah.
memory, I wrote it down, pedestrian network. It's red with for sidewalks or something, and it showed it on Galena Street Alley, and on Granite, but not Granite Alley. That one.
This is the map, yeah, that you're referring to. Yeah, so this is, we attempted to itemize where basically what the condition was, existing condition of pedestrian infrastructure. So where gravel versus just like grass or lawn versus paved sidewalk. And it looks like we actually excluded Granite because it's essentially a shared street location. So because there's no sidewalk, it's just an entire single surface where it's parking and local access, and then people park, in along the street, whereas Galena has sort of more of these gravel roadside locations in the alley. So that's why it's shown that way.
Well, I just thought that if you're trying to improve connectivity and if you're playing up Galena Alley, that why wouldn't you do it for Granite Alley? It's just a question.
Yeah, these are more of like,
but this is existing conditions
Yes,
as well.
that's what
This
I
is
was
not
gonna
the,
say.
plan.
yeah, this is the existing condition
Okay.
section.
My mistake, sorry. And then on the proposed cross sections where it shows the bike path in the right of way, for instance, on Granite, I read that it said raised driveway crossings. So does that mean that people backing out of their driveway are gonna hit a little bump and then go back down and continue out? It says
Yeah.
raised driveway crossings.
So idea is to when vehicles are crossing the pathways, that they have to slow down, and not the pathway doesn't go down to the pavement level and then come back up. But then the vehicle is the one that has to slow down as they cross the pathway.
So if,
That-
so if Public Works is gonna be plowing, taking care of these, the bike paths, is the bike path gonna be straight?
Same level.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Great. Is this an evolving document? Like we do these first initial implementations, see how they work and say, oh, maybe we need to tweak, or is this kind of, once we get it hammered out, that's what we're going for?
I guess I would say certain things like the code sections, code improvements, those will be code. Code can always be changed. We learn. I mean, we thought Step Up Main was perfect when the town put that in 2015. As we've noted, there's challenges with pedestrian crossings that we've identified. There's challenges with the share roads and how those are interacting. So if we said this is the plan and this is exactly what's going to happen, I think we're being short-sighted and unrealistic. All plans evolve. It's certainly possible that council will choose to implement some portions of it, but say, you know what? We don't love the traffic circle at Madison and Main. I personally think it's not a bad, I think it's a pretty decent idea myself, but others might not agree and that might not get implemented. So it's going to evolve over time. Absolutely.
And what about like if we're trying to talk about what's happening on Main Street and where bicyclists go, and I don't know what kind of reach you have of saying, listen, if your responsibility as a bike shop on Main Street is to ensure your patrons aren't riding up and down, trying on the bikes. Is there any kind of way we can enforce these businesses who are funneling a lot of this problem right into Main Street? Is this an opportunity to look further into that? And is there
And
opportunity?
I think the biggest question is always going to be enforcement. Right now, we have signs up and down Main Street that says dismount zones, whatever else.
Maybe
It's
like a
just
shock thing that they ride over, the rubber.
backup nails that you see, whatever
Yeah.
else. No, I mean, it
Steel
is an
strips.
enforcement issue. So at this point in time, I don't know that it's been codified. It's a please dismount. It's a request rather than a law. So that would be the next step if that was something that council wanted to do.
I just had two additional things. I think they're pretty quick. They're more recommendations. So we're finding ever more residential in these two alleys that are up for discussion here. And it seems like, I don't know, I know they can't be streets, but they shouldn't be alleys. And I saw the report that talks about them the way they are, but the proposed cross section just says truck parking here. I don't think that's realistic. I think that we should try and make some accommodation for human life back there or something. And there may just not be enough space. I'm just curious whether
Especially with
that's
alleys
been
being
like really
access.
studied about what the options really are from building edge to building edge. And then the other one is regards to the rest of the cross sections and the right of ways. I would be interested to see how that sort of overlays over an aerial of the existing town with wonky properties and all sorts of other things. And like, are these ROWs that are shown on here fully like compliant today? So we're working within the space that exists. And I don't mean to jump into a thorny bush, but at some point, somebody's gonna have to rip the Band-Aid off, right?
Yeah. And Susan, why don't you tackle that one?
We're aware of the pain that the Band-Aid will cause. We know that there's a lot of right-of-way encroachments, and we know that these cross sections aren't perfect. And so that's why one of the first priority projects in there is to really look at that 30% design of where are those critical flaws and how can we work around them. So this is, although this is our complete streets plan, I think this is a good plan, but like Don said, it's going to evolve with, especially with trying to actually implement some of these projects.
Like their design guidelines.
There's some are design guidelines. I think it's a plan, right? It's where are we going from here? And what order are we gonna do it in? And so I think on a high level, we need that plan in order to take the first step, because right now we've sort of been stifled by what are we gonna do? you know,
And
so
is the implementation going to land in the purview of council? So they're gonna dole out what happens kind of once,
Everything, I mean, all of this is capital projects, right?
Yeah.
So, and the town council manages the budget. So certainly as staff, we'll certainly use this plan as we're making budget recommendations and we'll go from there. So.
If I can make a something to think about, since the alleys are being used more as through streets, that, the angled parking or any parking next to the alley, when there's an SUV or a pickup truck in the very last spot next to the alley and people are shooting through, it's really dangerous. It's almost as if that last spot next to the alley shouldn't be there. Now, we don't want to get, less parking, but it's like going in the roundabout. Okay, am I gonna make it? I'm on the, I have the right of way. But it's just something to think about with the visibility. It's like no parking, this close to corner, sort of thing. Just something to think about.
And I think that was addressed in the plan views shown at the alley intersections because that certainly was a concern.
Okay, good.
So I think that is a point well taken. Yep.
kind of like when you.
Yeah.
pull out of
Saga
High
has something
side
there.
there, it's just like every alley, you just can't see it either way, and snow, and the reality is streets and parks and all of these are beautiful and implemented well in the summer, but we have 9 months of winter here. And we have
I
to
wanted to jump in on that.
consider these things in the snow removal when
Mhm.
we're designing them and what those costs are and budgets are each year to plow another bike path, another this. And
Yeah,
Any
I just wanted to add on that alley, there is a specific project recommended as well for to address exactly that kind of question, because that came up in the charrette a lot as well, how dangerous the alleys are as they cross the avenues. So there's a specific project to handle that design issue.
Thank you. Any other feedback that anybody wants to provide at this time, Lena?
Thank you. No, I think I've made my comments. Thanks.
Thank you.
So as I will add that as the planning commission, as you read this, you can certainly supply more comments as part of this comment period. And please do. Susan, how are we going to get those? Is that going to be through the website or how do you want to do that?
Right now, it's just set up as a PDF on the website. You have a copy of it. If you want to email comments, if you want to make comments into your PDF and send them my way, that's great too. However,
And would you have a cutoff time that?
we do. Can you put up, Aaron, can you put up the schedule again? The schedule for,
While they're pulling that up.
Oh, so there was a conversation of basically Main Street from Creekside stop to Madison stop. They were talking about slowing the speed down. That was a concern. So I'm just going back to our last meeting. That part of Main Street has a very real possibility of becoming more developed and commercial, which could also be a natural slowdown as people start looking and turning in and out of those new stores that we talked about at our last meeting.
Yeah.
Because that, I keep hearing, is the vision that we're trying to expand Main Street a little bit. And so if that vision becomes reality, there'll be a natural slowing between Creekside and Madison.
one thing to keep in mind is there is a much wider right of way. West Main has 130-foot right of way and also has a number of utility easements in it going this way, whereas East Main does not have that. So it's always going to have a wider street profile and a different feel than East Main. So
Not mountains, right?
Yep.
Nice ending. All right. Well, if there's no further comment or, Lena, go right ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna request, could we get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation? Great, thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna close this work session item. What time do we've got? Let's take a 10-minute break, stretch our legs, use the restroom. And resume here at 7:15 to start what I assume everyone is here for. So sorry that we're delaying this a little longer. but Take a intermission till 7:15.
Thank you.
And do not need to reiterate other people's points. We all hear them. We all get your comments. And we are excited to hear the presentation. So I will turn the floor over.
And first, before you do that, I just want to state what the Town of Frisco Planning Commission's role in this application is. The Lake Hill property is not within the town limits of the Town of Frisco. However, it is on the border. So certainly there's potential impacts, obviously, to the Town of Frisco, both positive and negative, that could result from the project. So throughout the process, the county has engaged the Town of Frisco in the process in Lake Hill. And as a result of that, because this is integral to the future of the Town of Frisco, we have the opportunity to act and comment as a referral agency. All of our comments at the Planning Commission, they're not binding, but certainly I think the county is going to take them into consideration as they move forward in developing the property. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kate Berg and the rest of her team if you want to introduce your team.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us. My name is Kate Berg. I work for Norris Design. This is an application that the County Housing Department has submitted to Summit County for review. And we have here on our team, Jason Dietz.
Yeah, Jason Dietz, County Housing Director.
Sorry.
And then we have
And
Hi, Brandon Howes. I'm a county housing planner.
so we've got Jason and Brandon from the Housing Department. The Housing Department's the applicant, and then the application will be reviewed by the County Planning Commission, 10 Mile Planning Commission, and BOCC. And Lindsay Hirsch is the staff planner from Summit County Planning Department, and he is on the Zoom call. So if there are any questions for the County Planning Department, Lindsay's on Zoom. Elena Scott with Norris Design is also on Zoom because our firm, Norris, has been contracted by the county to help facilitate this overall rezoning. So we're going to try, I know it's kind of getting to be a long night and everyone's hungry and tired. So we're going to try to keep this really quick. But certainly, you know, if you have detailed things you want to talk about that we don't hit in the presentation, we're happy to do that, you know, during the discussion Q&A portion.
Perfect. Thank you.
So let's move this along. Really what we're trying to do here is get the word out to the public and to the town about this project being initiated and make sure that we are communicating with the Town of Frisco. We are working collaboratively as we develop the zoning document. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is really just to kind of give you an overview of where things are headed with the project schedule, do a very high level overview of the draft zoning document, and really just listen to what y'all have to say. You know, we very much want to hear your input because we're at a point now where we've just put together a first draft of the PUD. It's got to go through the whole work session process and then move forward with a, sorry, is my present? Okay. So basically, like we're now in the input gathering phase. So all questions are valid, all input is needed. So here we are. This is our agenda for tonight, and we'll just launch into it. I kind of covered a lot of this already. One key thing just to note is that right now we're just doing the PUD rezoning work session. So we're going to have work sessions with 10 Mile Planning Commission and BOCC. No decisions are going to be made. And then whatever comes out of the work sessions as far as guidance will be used to refine a formal application that will be submitted later in 2022. This is the project timeline. So right now we're here on February 3rd talking to you all. We're planning to have our work session with 10 Mile Planning Commission February 10th. And then BOCC work session is scheduled, sorry, I should have updated this for March 8th. Time still TBD, but we're going to be going to the board on March 8th. And so we prepared a draft application, submitted in November, did some work between in December and January to try to get the word out and get input from adjacent property owners, adjacent HOAs, the transit board, doing some community open houses to get the word out to the public about this project and what's coming. And input opportunities to provide input to Frisco Planning Commission, 10 Mile Planning Commission, BOCC over the coming weeks. So what's happening? There we go. Just wanted to kind of gloss over the background because I know we've all been living this for many, many years. So I won't bore you, but just as a reminder, the county and the town of Frisco have been working collaboratively on the Lake Hill property acquisition and planning for this to be a workforce housing neighborhood since 2000. So we're coming up on 22 years. We're at, 21, 22 years. The property was purchased in 2016 from the Forest Service. We went through a year-long master planning effort between 2016 and 2017. Lots of community input went into that. Lots of analysis as to how this parcel should be developed to best integrate into the town of Frisco and be well connected and consistent with the town of Frisco character. There was quite a bit of analysis that was done during the master planning effort that I just kind of wanted to reiterate because I think it's important, where we really looked at and studied similar neighborhoods throughout the town of Frisco that provide kind of a similar mix of residential unit types. And so, the communities closest to Lake Hill, Lake Forest, Prospect Point are mostly multifamily and townhomes. But we looked at a lot of different neighborhoods throughout town of Frisco. And one thing that's kind of interesting just to keep in mind is we started looking at the Peak One neighborhood and the Mountainside neighborhood together as kind of a nice model for designing a community that has a real diverse mix of unit types, single family, duplex, townhouse, multifamily, at an appropriate scale for Frisco. That area, Peak One and Mountainside combined, is approximately 38 acres with an overall density of 9.5 units per acre. So very similar to what we're looking at trying to develop on the Lake Hill site. This is the overall plan, neighborhood plan that's in the Lake Hill master plan that recommended up to 436 housing units. That would be a real mix of rental ownership, diverse mix of unit types, centrally located community facilities, open space, hiking trails. So we'll kind of get into how this guidance in the master plan is moving into shaping the zoning document. So here we are. The master plan is in place as a guidance document, and we are moving forward with the implementation strategies recommended in the master plan. So collaborative planning between the county, the town, CDOT is, what was that?
Just a Zoom member talking.
Sorry. Collaborative planning is underway. That's all kind of in progress, and we'll give you a status update on where that stands. The rezoning, like we said, just got initiated, with the first step being the work session. And then once we get the property zoned and we have all of our planning in place for infrastructure and these other collaborative planning items, then the next step would be deciding what is phase one and moving forward with actually planning and building the first phase of housing. So real quick, just wanted to kind of highlight some of the key findings and recommendations in the impact study that was recently completed by the county. And we did include the full summary report, the impact study summary report, in your packets. So we're not going to go into a ton of detail on that, but just kind of hit the highlights real quick. I'm going to kick that over to Brandon.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Kate. So I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly. I know traffic is one of the big concerns, and I know there was some outreach from the public on traffic. So the Lake Hill project is projected to generate approximately 2,462 weekday daily trips. But even with that, the traffic impact study came back and said all of the study intersections actually operate overall at an acceptable level of service C or better, with all side streets approaches at level D or better. So basically, the projected trips will have little impact on the existing roadway network and study, except at North 10 Mile Drive, which you can see is highlighted in the red bubble. North 10 Mile Drive needs to be monitored for signalization in the future. But I wanted to also bring your attention to the CDOT Exit 203 interchange project, which is going to change traffic patterns at North 10 Mile Drive and the Dillon Dam Road. CDOT's currently working on a study, and this is their current concept. As you can see, there's a new roundabout that's kind of near the intersection of Dillon Dam and North 10 Mile Drive. And to the west of that roundabout, there is a proposed underpass. So a lot of the traffic that would be going from the dam road over to, Whole Foods, Safeway, Walmart, will be using that underpass and completely avoid the intersection with Highway 9. A couple other items I just wanted to address in terms of traffic. The traffic study the counts were done in January of 2019. And the county is looking to possibly update this study, possibly this summer. And traffic was factored. The traffic counts were done in January. We know this is not a peak month, but the traffic study was factored to account for the peak month being in the summer. We actually used CDOT analysis of their permanent counters and came up with a 1.1 factor for those months. Let's see. In addition to potential traffic improvements that may be needed at like North 10 Mile Drive, the county's, as part of the impact study and master plan, recommended adding a new transit route on the Dillon Dam Road that serves Lake Hill, adding 2 transit stops. That will obviously be an alternative mode of transportation that will help reduce vehicle traffic on the dam road, and also extending the rec path from Lake Hill all the way to the intersection of Highway 9 on the dam road. This is about a half-mile extension and it's estimated to cost about $750,000. You probably have heard a little bit about water service and wastewater service. Just going to touch on those. Those negotiations are ongoing with the town of Frisco for water and with the Frisco Sanitation District for wastewater service. In terms of a fiscal impact, the study found, and this was a study done by EPS, I should have mentioned that at the beginning of the project, but basically the net impact to the town of Frisco is actually estimated to be positive due to a large portion of the new residents at Lake Hill doing their shopping in the town of Frisco as expected. And the net fiscal impact to the county general fund is $17,000 per year or $41 per housing unit. Total offsite infrastructure costs are estimated to be probably around $22 million. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kate.
All right. So just a real quick overview of the proposed rezoning. One thing just to mention, which we touched on already, is the master plan really talked about collaborating, the county and the town collaborating to develop the PUD zoning document. So that's why we're trying to do our very best to communicate regularly with town staff to make sure that we're identifying, when is it appropriate to communicate and get input from the town staff, planning commission, council. So we very much plan for this to be a collaborative process, even though at this point in time, the plan is for the property to stay within the county's jurisdiction and for the BOCC to be the final review authority. Just a reminder on the project timeline. We don't really need to dwell on that, but I did just want to make sure that everyone is aware that we're trying to do our best to get the word out about this and really let people know what's happening. Let them know you have an opportunity to review the documents, the zoning documents, and provide input at appropriate points during the process. So really trying to make sure people are aware of what's proposed and have an opportunity to provide input to the county during the review process. We did just have 2 virtual open house meetings on January 19th that were really well attended. We had a total of about 150 people participate in those 2 sessions. And as you can imagine, as we've been hearing, these are some of the key discussion topics. Definitely a lot of focus on what's going to happen with Dillon Dam Road as far as impacts and infrastructure improvements, as well as just a lot of curiosity about, timing of the project, how the project's being funded, and also a lot of interest from people that are looking for housing, both employers and residents of Summit County or people that work in Summit County and currently live outside of the county limits, just interested in knowing, what housing is going to be available, unit types, timing, what the deed restriction requirements are going to be, and if they meet those requirements, what the home pricing is going to be. So just trying to kind of keep those people in the loop, get a really good interested parties list going so they can stay aware of what's happening. And so really kind of what we wanted to focus on here with you today as the Planning Commission is just giving you a nice overview of what's in the zoning document. We're going to keep it high level, like I said. You all know what tends to be in zoning documents. So this is kind of the list of key topics that are addressed in the document. Overall guiding principle is we're just trying to strike the right balance between providing some predictability for the community, for future development partners, while also acknowledging that this project is going to need to get developed over a number of years in phases. And we do have to maintain some flexibility to respond to changing housing conditions, changing market conditions as the project gets built out. So some of the key documents in the master plan that guided the development of the draft zoning document are the land use plan, which really kind of divides the property into some different planning areas with highest density multifamily tucked up against the highway, lowest density, smallest scale development down along the dam road and the adjacent next to the adjacent properties, and then sort of a mix of residential types and kind of medium density in the orange, kind of in the middle of the site with some centrally located community facilities, and then a network of open space running through the property and providing some buffers. This is a little bit more detail in the master plan that guided the development of the zoning document on housing types and number of units. So here we are, the first section of the PUD that really outlines kind of the permitted uses and the development plan, basically takes the guidance in the master plan and divides the property into 4 planning areas. And so we've got planning area A, which is 2 to 3 story single family duplex and kind of smaller scale townhomes. So smallest scale development adjacent to the dam road and the neighboring properties. Planning area B, it has a range of residential unit types, trying to provide some flexibility for future site programming and some centrally located facilities within planning area B. So some of the permitted community facilities that are listed in the PUD are a community center that could have uses including kind of flexible community space, indoor, outdoor, as well as potentially childcare on site, and then other common uses like leasing offices, property management, storage. Planning area C is up against I-70. That would be the highest density multifamily residential, 3 to 4 story multifamily residential buildings. And then planning area D is a continuous open space that would link the community from east to west with trails and both passive and active recreation and amenities. So some of the permitted uses within the open space would be parks, open space and trails, playgrounds, dog parks, uses of that type. That is kind of the overall development plan. Some of the key components, this is the Exhibit C, which is the conceptual development plan, which is really largely taken from the master plan guidance. A couple key things to note are 3 acres of undeveloped open space being preserved in this southwest corner adjacent to Lake Forest condos. That's kind of a natural drainage, and it has some steep slopes and just sort of lends itself to provide a nice open space buffer there. Again, that small scale density adjacent to the dam road, and then the transit stops as Brandon mentioned. The open space plan, which is included as an Exhibit E, is proposing to preserve 7.3 acres of open space. That includes a 4-acre greenbelt, and then that 3 acres of native forest buffer in that southwest corner, as well as some additional open space within the individual planning areas. That would be open space buffers around the perimeter of the site, as well as some kind of mini pocket parks included within the individual development areas. And then also a network of interconnected walking and biking trails. that is shown in Exhibit F, the pedestrian and bicycle connections map. So then the PUD goes into a number of development standards. We're not going to include all of them in the presentation, but again, we can talk about any in detail that you would like. What we did want to just explain is kind of the overall design intent. So the existing character of the dam road and that site proximity to I-70 really influenced the proposed land uses and the proposed site design. So what we're trying to accomplish is creating neighborhood scale along the Dillon Dam Road by protecting an open space buffer with natural vegetation along the road and locating that small scale single family duplex townhome development nearest to the road. And then larger scale multifamily buildings being tucked up against I-70 that will block highway noise and create a buffer between the lower density homes and the highway. So tallest buildings along I-70 and then building height decreasing towards the lower portions of the site. And that's going to help preserve views to Dillon Reservoir, maintain southern solar access for all units. And then the design intent is for structures to be designed to step with the topography and provide walkout opportunities onto the central greenbelt. So you'll see the development standards have been drafted to try to accomplish that overall design intent. The PUD then goes into infrastructure improvements. And so, I mean, you can see that the Lake Hill Impact Study provides a lot of guidance on on-site and off-site infrastructure needs. The county is currently in the process of working through these recommendations, working with utility providers, CDOT, the town, and establishing plans for connecting Lake Hill with all the necessary utilities and doing improvements needed, for transportation, et cetera. So as the rezoning proposal continues to move through the county process and plans for infrastructure are finalized, this section of the PUD is going to be further developed and refined. Right now, the document has really just been reflected or drafted to reflect our currently anticipated plans, but additional details are going to be included as they become available. And then development phasing and implementation. There is a recommended phasing approach in the Lake Hill Master Plan, and we're really trying to remain flexible here so future site programming can be customized to meet those changing needs over time. So detailed phasing plans have actually intentionally been excluded from the zoning document. And we're just kind of going with the guidance that's currently in the master plan and the flexibility that we want to maintain over time. And then, of course, all zoning documents have sort of these general provisions at the end. In your packet, I know Don, I believe, Don, you included the town's comment letter. And then there is a response letter that we provided that goes into detail on some specific items that were noted by the town and some revisions that have been drafted to the PUD to respond to those. So that has to do with things like clarifying that accessory apartments do need to be deed restricted through an approved county deed restriction, clarifying that accessory apartments are still subject to other requirements like water taps and will be included in the water supply calculations. Just to understand, how accessory apartments might fit into this overall development plan. The way the PUD is currently drafted, we're allowing accessory apartments as a permitted use on all single family and duplex lots. So right now there's a total of 51 duplex and single family lots within the overall development. So if every single duplex and single family lot built an accessory apartment, that would be potentially up to 51 additional units. The likelihood of that is not good, but that would be the maximum. Some comments about building height that we're definitely prepared to discuss. I think, just wanted to communicate the overall intent here. just being this idea of having 3 to 4 story buildings up against I-70, 2 to 3 story in the middle of the site, and kind of stepping down to smaller, probably 2 story buildings on the Dillon Dam Road side of the property. Definitely looking at what's compatible with the adjacent properties. And so, looking at Lake Forest, that's, 3 stories with tuck under parking. It does appear that maybe there's some buildings in there that are a little higher than 3 stories. There might be a loft in there or something. But between Lake Forest and Prospect Point, those immediate adjacent developments, it appears like the common development pattern is about 3 stories with tuck under parking. But certainly we're open to input on building height and how to regulate it to make sure we're adhering to that overall design intent. And it's going to be compatible. It's going to work with the surrounding area. But there's also some flexibility for design with site topography. And then, sorry, just go back to the slide real quick. There was also a recommendation to include bicycle parking requirements. So we took that into account and drafted something to try to respond to that comment. And then some clarification on water supply, being obviously subject to the town and the county entering into a mutually beneficial water agreement. And then lastly, just some clarification that pedestrian and bicycle improvements will be made along Dillon Dam Road in conjunction with Lake Hill, and that the county will be constructing a connection to Summit Boulevard. And so, as we talked about, as the collaborative planning for those connections is finalized, the proposed locations and alignment of those routes will be added to the PUD Trails Plan, which is Exhibit F. So that's all we had. And yeah, we can open it up for input and questions.
Thanks, Kate. I think we'll add a little more structure in this time as we're adding public comment and go through questions, do some public comment, and then have some discussion, if that works for everyone. I'm going to start with Lena. If you have any questions for Kate or Jason or Brandon.
Sorry, no, I don't have any questions for Kate. Thank you.
Patrick?
I have 2, and they're not necessarily Kate's, but maybe the first one might be. We're showing, I think, 2 roundabouts on the dam road, and one of those, am I right about that?
Yeah.
And one of those is encompassed, I'm looking at page, 10 on my PDF, but it's the one that has the phasing plan. There's a couple of them, but anyway, the one that's closer to Frisco is encompassed in the development, and the other one's not. I'm just looking at the boundaries on the picture.
Sorry, I don't think we should. That's just saying that that's included within the phase 1 boundary for construction, not
Okay.
property line.
But the county would propose 2 of those to handle the density.
So I
Or-
think, I don't know if Jason wants to respond to this. Definitely, there's going to need to be improvements made to provide an intersection that can accommodate the traffic from the neighborhood. It does seem like roundabouts are the preferred design solution at this time, but I don't
Yeah.
know that that's locked in yet.
Yeah, there's really nothing locked in at Lake Hill, but that is probably the likely, intersection configuration,
Just
but it's
curious.
not locked in by any means.
And to that point, is the question, is 2 roundabouts enough access to provide access? Is that kind of the?
It was
basis
more
of the
just a
question?
clarification of the design or the pictorial representation. I think it's a fine solution, and you're gonna need something. So.
Yeah, I think that the specific, like the final design is going to be influenced by like the final traffic reports and the final recommendations as we get further into this. But this is a design solution that was in the master plan. The discussions with the transit board are really also kind of pushing towards this roundabout idea for turnaround, for the buses to be able to appropriately turn around. In the event that the Dillon Dam Road closes, the dam closes, also these turnarounds are helpful. So it's looking like they're likely going to be roundabouts.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any other questions?
And then one other one is about developer, I don't know, interest, progress, perspectives. Would the county be looking for a master developer? Or is this gonna be parceled out to however many people take on X number of units? And because it becomes harder to create a coordinated image, which is shown in the development documents that we've got. The more developers there are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that I don't foresee an overall master developer because of the various development types. In many cases, we're going to be going at various AMI levels, various rental categories, and also for sale type units. So the apartment developers are probably not going to be as interested in the single family or townhome. So I do see a couple of developers working within the confines of the PUD, the master plan, and then the overall governing HOA documents, which will allow, kind of outline all of the, develop the guidelines to fulfill the vision once it's fully created. And now we're just in the painting stage of that.
I hear you. Thank you.
Donna, do you have questions?
I've been involved with this project before I had gray hair. Is the Lake Forest, the 73 units, that's Frisco, isn't it? Yes. So this is, just right on the border. So what I think is interesting about this, and especially looking at phase 1 and phase 1B. In something that I read, there's a total of 275 rental units and 161 properties for ownership.
Well, I think one of the things to just note is I probably shouldn't have put this slide up because this is just a very conceptual kind of phasing guidance that's actually in the master plan. And we put this up in the presentation, which might have been my error, just to really articulate that this a development of this size is definitely going to be developed in phases over a number of years, and just start to give people an idea for kind of how it might break into phases and the number and types of units that might come online at different points in time. And this has been helpful in us having conversations about how the infrastructure needs and infrastructure improvements are going to be able to be phased in over time as needed to handle the number of units in each phase. But I should say, and this is confusing for me to put this slide in like this phasing plan is not, with this level of detail, is actually not going to be in the PUD zoning document. So I apologize for that confusion.
Where my question was going was that the of all these potential units, 75 rental, 161 ownership, what's the percentage of deed restricted? Because I read it's at some deed restrictions.
100% or all this, the entire property is deed restricted workforce housing. There's not anything that's not.
Yeah, I thought it said some deed restrictions. So, and again, it's a working document.
We'll have to make that very clear because it's 100% workforce housing.
It also then stated 30 hours a week restriction. What if, especially for the rental, what if someone can only get 25 or 2 10-hour-a-week jobs and they need rental and they wouldn't qualify?
Yeah, the 30-hour is the standard that's in the in just about all the jurisdictions, deed restrictions, including the county and the deed restriction guidelines. And it's 30 hours per week per year on average, because we recognize that during certain times of the year, depending on what business industry that you're in, summers might be the busy time where you're working 40, 50, 60 hours, or winter might be that time, and then you slow down. So we do acknowledge that, and that's why it's an average over the course of a year.
Donna, where are you pointing in the PUD? I'm sorry. Because I don't think we specified that since all the details of the deed restriction.
Kate, are you talking, what are you referring to?
And as I read it, I just wrote it down.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, and then the last thing is that if Lakeville, it's county now property, but they're tapping into water and Frisco's, storm water everything. Infrastructure, would it ever potentially be rolled into Frisco?
We're moving forward with it as a county property. I don't, we did the infrastructure alternatives analysis to look at all of the water and sewer providers, including Dillon, Buffalo Mountain, Joint Sewer Authority. Yeah, so the most cost feasible were Frisco Sanitation District and Frisco Water, but there's no plans to annex it, at this point.
Ira, do you have questions?
Okay. So it's my understanding that the transit department, we're looking to get the bus to be able to go to Dillon. I know we talked about a roundabout snow occasion, but is the plan to actually get bus routes over the dam?
Ideally, yes, we would love to do that, be able to have Summit
Okay.
Stage.
And then we had that nice drawing from CDOT. Is there any ability to, because we get concerns about the traffic on the dam road. That's where the conversation started. That execution of that CDOT plan would seem to me critical to the success of the dam road, not necessarily Lake Hill. But that's a miserable portion of driving. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
That was, though, the exit 203 interchange design.
Yeah, that whole, yeah, it's kind of a nightmare. Too many people going too many ways and traffic signals trying to control. It's just too much. So I'm just wondering how, one, that would be you guys, get in a position to kind of get CDOT, because they got to get other money. How can we ensure the constituency that says to us, look, we're not against the project. We just want to see the dam road work. So how can we ensure that these projects will go hand in hand? Maybe beyond the scope.
With like the timing of the CDOT effort?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say that, all the towns and county work very closely on committees with CDOT to look at this and other areas across the county where CDOT has, similar type of issues, developments, and projects. The overall improvements of Lake Hill, we do coordinate with CDOT. We're at a very, very preliminary stage. And as we continue to move forward with the zoning and then the site planning of the project and the overall timing of infrastructure, we will, it's an ongoing process to coordinate with CDOT. I can't really speak to the level of influence of that we have with getting CDOT to do various things, but there, other than that, the county, the towns, all of the towns, Silverthorne, Frisco, Dillon, do work with CDOT very closely.
And I'll add on to that too. Certainly the town, the county, we all are working towards this, and an example of that collaboration with CDOT is the exit, the auxiliary lane project on I-70 that's going to be happening between exits 203 and 205 starting this summer. So we do advocate very strongly for Summit County projects at the Intermountain TPR meetings, which gets projects and gets project funding. So we will continue to do so.
But that's a good comment, just that, how can we try to push this along, since it does seem like it would really help the overall success of this stretch of dam road being redesigned to function.
I think it would get more unequivocal support of the project. Otherwise you're gonna have a number of bumps in the road, and CDOT, like all of us, they don't have a unlimited funding, but I'm sure they have a wish list. And the wish list, on the wish list for more money, or is it more money? It's actually 205, which is a major nightmare. Right?
But haven't they already signaled that 203 is priority over 205?
I hope so, you're right.
I thought I heard that at the town managers meeting
Something
last
to that
week.
effect, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it wasn't written in stone, but.
As Kelsey pointed out, this came out of the TPR as part of the STIP. exit 203 has been prioritized by CDOT over 205, in part because of constructability and other reasons.
And financing, right. So that's good to hear. And then my last question about thinking about master developers, is there any intention for any of these units when built to be retained ownership by a municipality? Or is it all going to be privately owned? And let's say an insurance company owns a bunch of rentals that they're going to have to live with our rules, not theirs.
Well, yeah, the municipalities typically, when we develop a project like Huron Landing, we hold a couple units back because I know the county, I suppose that, the towns are all struggling with the same issues that everyone else is struggling with, housing and employees. So I would expect that we would hold on to a handful of the rental units
I guess that.
and then open it up to,
Right, is like,
but it's
none of
not,
those details
yeah,
have
none of
been
those
worked out
details
yet,
have been worked
but we
out, but
need
it's,
to Figure them all out as we move forward.
yeah.
So-
At the zoning stage, it's not something we're looking at, but there's probably a high probability that, that there would be units available for that use.
It's good to know, like, when, whatever input is on, folks that are interested. You have kind of a list of people who are contacting you that are interested in housing.
People contact us every day. I mean, nonstop before Lake Hill, after, I mean, it's,
Because where I'm coming from is I don't think that municipal government should be in the landlord business.
oh, no, we're not planning on owning and operating them. We don't do that with our rental units. We actually typically, for example, Wintergreen, the most recent 196 units in Keystone.
Right.
That is a partnership similar to how this would be and in Wintergreen's case, it's Gorman. Gorman owns, develops the land and operates it. The county helped with subsidies to make it work. And, that's probably the same type of structure. We don't have all the details of the AMIs, et cetera, but we don't want to be we don't want to be a landlord. We're looking for, because there's like Gorman and Quorum and a lot of other different companies, that's what they do as their core business model. And that's who those types of people and businesses, entities would be doing that rental portion. And we would do an RFP and, and have a process for it to be bid on. Yeah. But yeah, no.
I'm good.
Andy.
Yeah. Couple of questions. First of all, it's been a while since we saw this, and the last time we saw a version of this, the feeling was that the utilities were a real struggle. The water rights I had heard at the time, Frisco had the water rights, but it was going to take us right to our max, and that if we had a low water year, we were going to be in trouble, or if we needed more water, we would have given it all to Lake Hill. And then the sewer was an issue because it meant maybe a new sewer main down the middle of Highway 9. Can you just update me on where you guys are with getting utilities, and is everything looking rosy, or are we still trying to get through some hurdles there?
There's always a lot of there's a lot of negotiations to figure out all of the variables, but starting off with water, the county does have water that we can dedicate, and we'll offer to dedicate to the town of Frisco to not put them in that position where if they have to use up all of their water. We don't want that. We want them to have water in drought years, et cetera. And we have the water rights to back up Lake Hill. Regarding we're working to Brandon's point, when Brandon was talking about it earlier, we are still in negotiations with the town. And, it's a complicated document and it'll take a little while, but we're working through it, and that's, the stage that you're in at the stage in every project. The same with the sewer. We just met with the Frisco Sand District last week, had a good meeting. So we're continuing to work out those details as well. One interesting point with that you had made that, so we had working with the town of Frisco, we had done a build out analysis of the Frisco Sand District, and with or without Lake Hill, the sewer plant needs upgraded. With Lake Hill, it triggers it faster. We are looking to, figure out, all the different triggers and timing of how Lake Hill impacts that. But Lake Hill would not be a driver in and of itself that would cause the expansion. Without Lake Hill, the expansion will be needed at full comp plan build out.
I think, Jason, maybe do we want to put, without answering the question, are you looking for more specific details?
Well, I don't have more specific details.
I just want to, I mean, I would assume that because you guys are here, we're seeing paths through this. We haven't necessarily identified which is the best path, but it's not a deal breaker anymore. We're feeling like we have a way that we can make this work, and the utilities are gonna not have a detrimental impact on town Frisco.
We're
is
in the
goal.
process of working through those agreements.
Okay, yeah.
We are working on them.
I would,
Yeah, there's
That's progress.
absolutely. And it's not uncommon for a project of this size or a project much smaller than this, where you are working through these things. We're not looking to start construction next week or next year. We have a long ways to go, and we're at, and that's where we're, starting the rezoning process with the, where we are now, not at the decision point, but seeking input and feedback from our partners and neighbors here in Frisco. But yeah, we're working through those agreements, and I think
As we work through the zoning.
As we
We're
work through-
basically running these two things
concurrently, yeah.
developing these agreements, getting a plan in place for the infrastructure piece. And then we were figuring, well, we might as well get the zoning process going and figure out all those other details of the zoning document so that we can kind of expedite this and do things concurrently. But obviously, y'all know when you approve a zoning, a final rezoning, you have to make findings that there's sufficient water supply and sewage capacity to serve the development, and that the infrastructure, like the road system, can handle it. So as we move into the actual formal rezoning review and approval, we have to have all those
Exactly.
details worked out.
Okay.
And we will need to.
Yeah, that's
I just was curious if we had solved that. It sounds like we're still working on
Still
it.
working on it, but there's more movement and more work.
But at this stage, you're always working on it as you're developing. You don't do one task, then start the next task. You dovetail multiple tasks throughout a development, and this is, this would be a typical process.
My other question sort of dovetails with something Patrick said earlier about just the cohesiveness of the project. We talk about having multiple developers and multiple years of phasing through this project. What level of architectural control are you thinking you want to exert over this project? Are you going to try and really dictate a style? Are you going to let the project kind of go in different directions as long as it meets the height limit? Or what are your early thoughts on sort of controlling the design so that there is some cohesion while still allowing for some?
And so, yeah, at this stage, we're not putting the design guidelines in place, so to speak, but absolutely there will be design guidelines so that you have that overall cohesion between the different development types, which is common in even larger master developments. Most large developments like this don't have necessarily one master developer. They'll bring in a lot of different developers that are working towards and from a common set of design guidelines. And that's what we anticipate as well. I mean, there's going to be a master HOA, and then there'll be like sub associations, because we're going to need someone to take care of the snow removal on the trails and the paths that aren't associated necessarily with single family or townhome or apartments. But we'll have to have that structure in place, and that would also have, the overall design guidelines and whatnot.
I mean, I will say that on pages, 11 and 12 of the draft PUD, we do have design guidelines for neighborhood and site design, road and streetscape design, and building design. And, this is definitely something that I would love input on as we get further into the process.
Yeah.
Because the master plan provides a ton of design guidance that's just advisory, but at least you get a feel for what the overall intent is and what we want the overall cohesiveness to look and feel like, with character imagery from places in Frisco that we like. So we've got this great, very comprehensive guiding document, but we are kind of trying to decide what level of detail do we want to put in a zoning document or to put in something that becomes more? code
Yeah, we're not
law?
looking to put a great deal
Yeah, we
of that
haven't
type of
really-
in a
we
zoning
haven't really
document.
made
That's way down the
recommendations
road.
yet.
Yeah,
No, I know it's early. I'm just curious if the
Yeah.
idea is to try and set a tone for the.
absolutely.
project
Yeah.
And get people to stay within that framework, or if we're gonna start seeing more eclectic designs out there with less structure. Sounds like you guys are going for the former.
We're-
Have we really decided yet?
We haven't really had, yeah, we haven't decided those, but like with any, there's going to be certain structures overall, how loose or how tight, yet to be determined, but there absolutely will be some sort of formal structure in place so that it, meets the overall design goals.
From designers who have good input.
Yeah.
who Want to help guide, regulations that strike the right balance. All that input is very much needed.
It is a tricky balance. I'm
Mhm.
curious kind of what,
Yeah.
what side of that scale you were hoping.
I mean, no decisions yet, so let's, as we move forward, think about it and be thoughtful.
Yeah.
And try to strike the right balance.
That's all.
My questions are, so the land is owned by Summit County.
Correct.
Is this gonna be an entire land lease project that in 100 years? I mean, because if you buy a townhome, you own the land underneath it. If you buy a single family home, is it postage stamps and you own the land underneath it? Like, so what's the structuring of ownership look like?
Well, I think it depends on the unit type, like you said. So in all likelihood, it'll probably be the traditional way we design and sell off, so it would be like single family and duplex will likely own their lots. Townhomes will likely be townhouse flats, where you own the structure and some limited common elements, and then there's general common elements. There's, common area maintained in common ownership. And then multifamilies, I guess, depending upon whether they're condominiumized for ownership or rental, would be platted, subdivided.
Yeah, condos, the HOA would own it.
Standard practices.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
That's good. And then, so this accessory dwelling unit, is that 51 units accounted for the 436, or is that an additional to make it like 480 units?
Potentially in addition to.
Okay.
So yeah, if you were to add the 436 and that maximum 51, that would get you to 487.
PUD, wouldn't that need to discuss that additional up to the amount?
Yeah, let me actually talk about that because it's because the way the county code is written right now, an ADU, if they meet all the requirements, deed restriction, local workforce housing, it does not count as density. You do, however, have to have the water and the sewer and all of that. So with and parking and yeah, and other. So as we go through and finalize our negotiations with the town, with water, with the Frisco Sand District and sewer, there's going to be some cap of EQRs that we have to work with. And Lake Hill is going to take a while to build out once we actually start to build because of the number of units. The markets may change, the needs may change, and we wanted to add the ADU as an option. It's probably an unlikely option to happen because you have to have a fairly sizable lot in order to make it work. And the way it's currently set up, it probably does. I mean, it just in the master plan, maybe a couple of them would work. But if, for example, we don't end up building a certain number of apartments or condos or townhomes, and there's more single family and the lots can be bigger, then we could potentially allow some ADUs. But we're still going to be working with some overall cap and sewer taps and water availability. But as county code is right now, ADUs are not considered extra density on a lot, and that's how it's written in the PUD as well.
Okay.
But there will be some overall cap, and there may be no ADUs at all, just because of as we go to the next steps and figure out get several more hurdles. We're doing the final land plans, where and site plans. The lots may not be able to accommodate an ADU, and we don't have any, but we had a lot of debate internally about whether we should have an ADU. We decided that we should start off with the concept of allowing the right to have an ADU.
Well, I think that there's a lot of discussion about just providing flexibility for people who own single family
Yeah.
properties to potentially, have at least the option of having a unit for, like multi-generational housing,
Yeah.
and also, you can house another employee and have workforce housing for two families. instead of
Offset
just
housing
one.
costs, yeah.
So efficient use of land, since we don't have a lot of available land. So
Well, speaking of efficient use of land, I'm looking at this phasing, which I know isn't set in stone and probably shouldn't have been included, as you said now. I mean, why are we building single family homes when the need's so high and building on top of the hill and building the big park? Where it seems to me you put the construction vehicles the furthest away from the entrance and build towards the entrance. But that's just maybe a feedback versus a question on.
feedback, because the phasing plan is for sure not.
Because I just don't quite understand where the logic is coming in here. Why are we building single family homes if we're 4,000 units behind the times right now?
Yeah.
Why aren't we building the bigger units?
At least with the rental, people could rent, and then if and when the houses. are
They
built
could
and
buy,
everything,
yeah.
Yeah, the phasing, that's just a relic of the master plan that was in the slide. It will absolutely change.
Yeah.
And and to some degree, infrastructure will dictate the phasing.
Yeah, and then I guess it's not a question, more of a comment, but
Yeah, no, that's a good comment. One thing I'll just clarify is I think the phasing plan in the master plan had a lot to do with how infrastructure needed to be extended into the site.
Yeah, because I was going to mention that as well, because typically you start at the lower point and build
Okay.
upwards because
Yeah.
of sewer.
well, it makes
storm
sense the
drain.
other way for me, but
And
I'm
that's
not a
also where
builder.
that's where the water connections are. So you kind of start
I
where
know,
the
I'm sure
connections are.
the
kinda go out,
architects roll
but-
their eyes at me and then comment, but.
Yeah, I think it has to do with that. And then also if you look at 1A and 1B combined, trying to hit like a wide variety of needs for different types and different ownership rental mix and price points and stuff.
Well, I don't want to get
So
too
that's a
heavy
good
on
comment.
that, but yeah. And so my other question is on traffic studies, because I know a lot of that feedback that we've received from adjacent landowners is on the traffic. And there was mentioning in there that it has to be done within 2 years of the project. Is there going to be a traffic study that includes the CDOT potential and doesn't include the CDOT potential?
So the comment, we have heard a lot of feedback from the existing neighbors. And the 2-year is actually a CDOT project requirement. That's
Okay.
where that came from.
All right.
But we're going to absolutely be updating the traffic study and get new counts. And we can get it in the summertime. But at this stage right now, that's the traffic study was meant for the impact study, which is we're using for the first step of zoning.
Yeah.
There will be another, it's easy enough to update and we will update it. But yeah, I think that that shouldn't be a problem at all.
There's a recommendation in the traffic study, right, that says that we need to look at it again after the 203 design.
Yes, the traffic study, in which we are doing, recommends coordinating with CDOT, which we, our traffic engineer, we're swapping data and they have our studies similar to, our traffic study referencing past studies. That's what that's now they have our study from 2019 to reference into their studies. They're currently doing a study now on the exit 203 interchange to look at breaking it into phases. But there will be and continues to be coordination with CDOT as they kind of unveil their final designs and construction phasing. Then we'll be able to really coordinate what our improvements are, because the area that our traffic study identified as the biggest area of concern, basically the first 300 or so units, it didn't have an impact, but after that, it would probably have an impact on the 10-mile area, which completely gets changed in the CDOT study. So there's definitely a float period there. But we'll be coordinating with CDOT to make sure.
I agree with Ira, it's like, if you can show them that there's going to be this great solution, but I mean, it's like, how do you tie all of these projects to, like, you can't do it unless that's triggered. those are my questions, so.
Coordinating those two efforts to the extent that we can.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
So Kate, I mentioned about the language of some deed restricted or whatever. So I went back and on page 4, I guess it's kind of strange or kind of confusing. It says county staff is proposing code amendments in the near future to allow for 80% rental units. The county would also bring development rights to the project from its transfer development rights program to allow some market rate development. So I guess that's where I got a little. 11.
Yeah, so how the current county code is regarding rental units is that to be exempt from the TDR program, which is a completely another program that unrelated to this, to be exempt from TDRs and bringing density in, the rental units have to be under 60% AMI. Since what that has done effectively is, made it very difficult for anyone to develop rental units within the county because they have to buy a TDR if it's going to be above 60%. The only way to effectively develop 60% or lower is through LIHTC funding, and LIHTC is competitive through the state and the federal, so you can't just keep on doing it year after year after year. So the county's in the process of modifying the housing code to increase that cap from 60% to 80% or higher. I don't think it's in the
So
PUD.
I think what it's coming from, and I remember seeing that as well, and I got it because I understood what it is. When you're doing a PUD or a development like this, you want to make sure that you're accommodating a wide range of potential AMIs. Under the county code currently, it's exempt from density if the average is 100% AMI or less for
sale,
ownership, and 60% AMI or less for rental. Under the town code, it's actually just 100% AMI period. So I think what Jason is referring to is they're looking at amendments to that, because what we're seeing as a county, as a town, it's 100% AMI or less is not the only need. We also need rental and ownership units at 140, 160% AMI. So we need to adjust that range.
Yeah, it was
to-
just a
to do
little
this.
confusing, to a layperson.
I'm still confused where that's written, but we'll just go with it.
Well, I'm looking in, our document that we got in, oh, yeah, and actually, it was the document that we got in our packet.
The PUD, draft PUD page 4, it sounds like, so. But we can find out
Lake
later.
Hill
so.
Workforce Housing Development Impact Study.
The impact study. Yeah, that was.
Oh, no, but that's what we were given to.
Yeah, that was one of the backup documents.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
And then
so-
the other thing, I thought you said that improvements to Dam Road would be like for the bike path on Dam Road, as opposed to, you've got the one red part, it's along the Dam Road. But then you have to, right on the shoulder the rest of the way, and with more cars and this and that, is there potential that a bike lane would be done on one side of at least one side of Dam Road there?
Yeah, the design isn't determined yet, but what we're trying to say is that work is gonna be ongoing, and once we decide on a design, we'll put those specific details in.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. All right, at this time, we're going to open up to public comment. I want to reiterate, please keep it to 3 minutes. State your name, address, and no need to say what your friends and neighbors have already said, if it's already said. Looks like we have one member of the public here. So we will take Mr. Cunningham first at the podium and then turn to online. So if you'd like to raise your hand now online, and then we will get to you, because I can't see the whole screen. So to you, Mr. Cunningham.
Okay, David Cunningham, 5 Miners Creek. And I really didn't know what I was going to say when I came here and kind of wanted to look at stuff on this plan. And, it's very exciting to me. I want to thank all of you who I at least know and see around town, and all the hard work that you've done here, and kind of the great kind of interaction that we've had in the county for bringing this project forward. I did not realize how much work has been done on this. It's the first time I've seen it. And I think it's awesome. I mean, I think that the work that Norris Designs has done and the county's done and coming to Frisco to get that input, it's just, it's really cool. And it's very quite exciting, you know, to see a project that we all know we need with the affordable housing and everything. It's just is so important and just everything from the phasing to the open space that's kind of already done on that. The project's is starting to actually, you can feel the project and it's super cool. And I just, want to thank you guys for kind of moving it to this direction. And I think Commissioner Ira, just as a note, something that I know from just being around here, I think you're Frisco Elementary School graduate, right?
I am.
So another Frisco Elementary School graduate, been here forever. But another thing that is super cool is the first town of Frisco has one of the top lobby firms really in the country on retainer, as does the county. And how they play and move in some of that to get to address some of your concerns, you're starting to see some of that synergy go together, and working with Squire Patton Boggs and Mike Dino and Mara Sheldon is something that could help you greatly. And you kind of have that, I believe the town, but they are working, I'm pretty sure, for the town.
Yes.
And so I know they are for the county. And so that's another kind of arrow in your quiver to kind of make this one of the truly great projects that we can all be proud of. So thank you for your work, and it's exciting, and I learned a lot, and keep on talking to the county and using another local firm, Norris Designs, to kind of get this as locally cool as it can possibly be.
Thank you. All right. I don't have full screen. Is there just one person?
I see a Benson with his hand.
We're gonna call on you first, if you'd like to unmute yourself, sir, and then state your name.
He's muted still.
Hold on,
He has to turn off he's muted on himself.
unmute. There you go.
There, are we good now?
We're good. Please state your
Okay.
name for the record.
David Benson, and I live in Prospect Point, 1520. Hey, I'm representing about 200 plus property owners who all access the dam road, and we are in support of the development. This is great work that you're doing, and the collaborative portion sounds good. We are a group of people who all access our units on the dam road. And much infrastructure will be happening down at the Lake Hill, and secondly, with exit 203. But those of us who access our units off the dam road, we're not sure anything has been done or addressed. And so our letter to you, and we'll go to the county too, was simply to highlight first the need for an updated traffic study, just because we are the people who see the traffic as we try to get in and out of our units. And we hope you will support that, as well as the county and whoever else you're collaborating with CDOT. And then secondly, we hope you will attend to, as infrastructure is going to be dealt with and funds will be accessed to really make those improvements, we would like you to really at least support, since we are part of town of Frisco, but it's a county road and CDOT's working, that the access to those units might be improved with, as a suggestion, one suggestion would be a turn lane for some of those areas for people to get in and out of their units safely. And that is an issue of safety for people as we've tried to access our units. So I don't want to belabor that, but we hope you will attend to the area between 203 and Lake Hill, and the 200 plus property owners who have to use the dam road every day to get in and out. So that's all I would say right now. Thank you for allowing the input, and we just like to get that on the record, and hopefully you could work with our 200 plus owners, for HOAs and some businesses, to see if there might be some improvements on the dam road at the same time, given what's all going to occur and funds will be accessed to improve that safety area, along with the bike path, along with the traffic that's going to be increasing there. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful feedback, and that will
Yeah.
certainly be taken into consideration from all of us, because we do agree there are, some indicated areas on the dam road that haven't been developed that aren't Lake Hill too. So certainly at the top of our brain is we all use the dam road. We all liked it, but it has its challenges and thank you for that feedback.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And next we will looks like, I lost my screen.
Mary.
Mary Kenny? If you would unmute yourself. And the floor is yours. Please state your name and address.
As opposed to what the screen says, I'm using my wife's computer. I'm Craig Kinney.
Hi, Craig.
My wife and I own Unit 208 at Bay Club. I'll just dovetail on what David said just prior to me. I helped him draft a letter and I did the deep dive into the traffic study. As previously stated in your briefing here, the county's going to do a new one. I hope they don't use the traffic counts from the previous study because even though it was completed in 2019, they used traffic counts all the way back to 2012. And we know that, the dam road is used a lot more. The months that it was done were like September and October and November. Those are not the high months anymore on Dam Road. It's the summer when everybody's trying to access the lake. In Bay Club, we actually have people use our back, probably 2 to 3 a day. They go back in our back lot and take out their kayaks and go to the lake because it's so restricted there. And also the previous studies that were done in the traffic, the peak hours they used were 8 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 5 in the afternoon. We know we're a resort community. That doesn't work either. And then as far as bike traffic, I didn't hear the answer on the bike path, but I assume it's going to be a big red stripe like they have down by the dam. And there were no pedestrian or bicycle traffic counts because there isn't a path there. So I hope all those are taken into account when they do the new study. I think when they do that, they're going to find out that it's a lot harder for us to access the dam road than you think. And also I went and talked to the owner of Ski Country Towing there, and they're very concerned about getting out onto the dam road because they have to go clear wrecks from I-70 all the way from Eisenhower up to Vail Pass. If they can't get out there, I-70 is going to be backed up. So a lot of businesses and people need to access the dam road. We would like a current study with current traffic counts. And then a possible answer to that would be putting in a third middle turn lane. Because if we have to get out of our units and cross a red bike path, we have to look at people going both ways. And then we have to merge in with traffic. And if we're going to Frisco, that's 4 lanes of traffic we have to take into consideration when we get onto the dam road. So we're very concerned, and so are the businesses on the dam road about that section right there. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. That is really, really good observation. And certainly I know they're jotting that down and we're putting that into our thoughts as well, because I didn't think of that. And I personally think the red stripe is very dangerous in general on the dam road. And so thank you very much. Are there any other public comments that you guys are seeing? Oh, sorry, Tim, I apologize.
There's one more online. There's one more online too.
We're going to take Mr. Sabo first here in person, and then I will address Mr. Novotny next.
Thanks, Kelsey. I wanted to just make a suggestion that the town of Frisco is going to be asked to absorb a lot of other impacts beyond the infrastructure and the roads and the traffic. Things like, I just wanted to make sure that there were some studies about the schools, what we need to do with, Frisco Elementary to handle. I imagine they're all going to be Frisco Elementary.
Yeah.
Right? And then also other bits of our infrastructure like pediatricians and doctors and the grocery stores and things like that. It would be neat to know the projected impact of what Frisco is going to be asked to absorb from, different standpoints besides physical construction and roads. And so the other thing I wanted to bring up was Frisco is unique. We have a lot of big communities around the town that, or dense areas around the town. I live just across the bike path, so I don't get to vote in Frisco and things like that. And this is another giant community that will be kind of sharing Frisco, but not having representation in the town. I guess, if we don't annex them or something like that. There's several of those around where I have lived, actually. I was on the planning commission a long time ago and I moved 2 doors over, and then I couldn't be on the planning commission anymore. So I just wanted people to consider the effect on the town and how these people would be represented, because they essentially will live in our town, and it's great. I'm all for it, but I just want to make sure that we're looking at the other impacts outside of that, and if there are studies going on and things like that. So just a comment. So
And I will say, and Brandon certainly could expand on this as well. It's a very good comment. There are a number of impacts. The impact, and that was one of the purposes of that impact study, was to look at the schools and a lot of the EMS and other government services. I don't think it got into the level of doctors and pediatricians and grocery stores, but it certainly did look at a lot of the government services.
And it did look at commercial as well, so that it is online on the housing department's website.
Jason, can you?
I have you step up
Yeah,
so people online can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the impact study did look at those services, schools, retail, commercial, in addition to government, library, EMS, all of that. It is on the housing department's website for those that want to do the deep dive into it. But it is a deep dive. And then to Craig Kinney's point, I think there's a misunderstanding. He had referenced the older studies. It's industry standard to review other studies. And that's what Fox Tuttle Hernandez did, that reviewed other studies that have been done on the Lake Road at different intersections from 2012 up to 2019. They did not use those counts. We did our own counts in 2019. So those are just other studies that are referenced, again, industry standard, to see if the conclusions, what they're seeing, line up over time, and so, CDOT and other and future studies will reference our study as well. So yeah, to that point.
Thank you. And thank you, Tim. I apologize that I skipped over you earlier. We will move on to Mr. Novotny. The floor is yours. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, hi, this is Mark Novotny. I'm at 35 Chickadee Lane in Bill's Ranch. Very nice presentation tonight, and I would echo what David Cunningham had mentioned. There's great progress here, and thank you for showing that. Just a quick question on the concept of the neighborhood, though. So you're going to have a lot of residents up there. Those are all people raising families. There's going to be a lot of kids. Is this going to be, maybe I missed it, I'm sorry. Is it going to be more some mixed use coming in there, where there'll be opportunities for local entrepreneurs to have a cafe, a coffee shop, a deli, a small grocery store, liquor store, I don't know, ski tuning, things like that? It felt like it was heavy residential, and all those people would need to move from there in order to go and get a cup of coffee or something. So I know you're early in your design concepts and your phasing, you made that clear, but will it ultimately morph maybe to a little bit of a mixed use, or are you going to have 400 or 500 people living up there that have to come out on the dam road to go to get, to go food or something? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, the current plan does not include any kind of neighborhood commercial center. There is a discussion of permitted community uses within a centrally located community facilities, but those are not including the uses that you've just listed. I'm thinking of kind of what you're talking about being sort of like the neighborhood center there at the entrance to Summit Cove,
Yes.
with coffee shops and pizza and the Kala and those types of neighborhood serving commercial. At this point in time, that has not been discussed as being included within the development. So that would certainly be something that could be taken into consideration as we move into finalizing the PUD zoning as to whether or not those neighborhood commercial uses are supported and if they should be allowed or not.
Yeah. Okay.
But right now, it's not drafted to include those.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the feedback. And then one other comment. Yeah.
Hi guys, this is Avery Novotny. I'm Mark's daughter. I also live at 35 Chickadee Lane because I currently live at home, and I'm a Summit High grad, and I live and work here in the community, and I would love a place to live outside of my house and make my own. And I just wanted to say, like, we can't lose sight of how amazing a project like this would be for the community and how much stress would be alleviated for our workers. And I a different socioeconomic status of people living here. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just wanted to add one thing onto the mixed use concept and I think there's probably some limitations on that because of the wording and the language in the Lake Hill Affordable Housing Act from 2014, which authorized the sale of the land from the Forest Service to the county in the first place. So Jason, I don't know if you want to address that, but I think ideally there would be some, however, I just don't know that it's possible.
Because it would be cool and make it a little self-sustaining, add to, Tim's comment that not everybody's there and moving and.
Yeah, to Don's point, there is that language that it's to be used for workforce affordable housing. So there, we can, it's a good point and we can take another look at it. But it's somewhat
that is a good
tight.
point to raise about the limitations in that
Act of Congress.
Yeah, so there, it's not just a pure amendment, like, where we can change that. We'd have to call up Congress, yeah. Right. Just Congress, they seem to be getting things done, I guess.
It is an interesting thing to say that it took an act of Congress to get this
Yeah.
project going.
Well, Donna, had, her long blonde locks back then, and she looks just as great now. So, any other public comments at this time? I am seeing none. I'm going to close this public comment. We're going to move back to work session. If anybody has additional comments that they feel now is a great time to do that, put your best foot forward and let them know what you think.
I think the public comment about if a little commercial could be, there around the park and this in the community center.
I think that'd be really cool.
I think it'd be really cool.
And also, like we talked about new people, but I think a lot of the people who, to your concerns, already are operating in this community for a good portion of it. I mean, where they are, and I don't know, some people may not like Safeway and City Market's their better option. So I think these are all very valuable statements though, and things to be considered. And a lot of people have put a lot of work in it and it's not being taken lightly. And I wonder a little bit about, are we considering some of the projects we've seen just in the last year into that use of water and sewer? And is it including the 400 additional units that remain in Frisco? Is that density being accounted for in addition to this? It is?
It is, yeah, and I think Jason or Brandon referenced the build out study that was done for the sanitation district. That took a look at the maximum development potential of the zoned lots in the town of Frisco, as well as some of the areas immediately outside of Frisco that may already have water service, such as some areas of Bill's Ranch. Same thing with the sewer district. So this study did consider that. And when we're looking at from the water side as well, we are also considering that what is the ultimate build out of the existing town of Frisco and what additional impacts could be from either development outside of the current town limits, whether it's Lake Hill or additional development in Evergreen or Bill's Ranch or some of these other neighborhoods.
And what about, have we considered if wells dry up in our 5 or 4 unincorporated areas that aren't in?
Yeah,
the
again,
town?
that's an ongoing discussion with the PFAS and all that other stuff that's under consideration as well. So yeah, there is a potential for that. The town currently provides water service to the county commons, which is the hospital, a lot of county buildings which are not in the town limits of Frisco. And certainly there's going to be additional development out there over time that will be wanting
I
both
know
water and sewer service.
4 wells that have dried up in Frisco Heights in the last 4 years and had to redig and I wonder if it's in correspondence with some other wells that got dug from the town that dig deeper or whatnot. And how do we address some of these
and
wild card factors that happen?
yeah,
I
and
mean,
we take those into consideration when we're doing the utility planning, whether it's for water, sewer. I mean, the Excel Energy is doing it and they're requiring additional reinforcements on new gas services as Andy's finding out. So, so yeah, this is a continual process when we're doing planning and thinking about what the ultimate build out of the community is and infrastructure needed to support that.
Take the floor.
Just to go back to the mundane, ADU, accessory dwelling units were mentioned earlier. it's my understanding that sometimes ADUs are permitted generously, but then restricted to full-time rentals and so forth. Would these be just open market ADUs or restricted ADUs?
Yeah. So with it, so each jurisdiction is different, and within the county, the only way you can have an ADU is if it's restricted to housing local workforce members.
Oh, because I heard, and I think it was you, that said, talked about multi-generational housing, and I think multi-generational is grandpa coming up once in a while.
I think that was
Well, I
Kate.
did say that. Yeah, I did say that. But then I thought about how I probably shouldn't say that because the county deed restrictions.
I was thinking about
require-
how she shouldn't have said that as she was saying it, but
Yeah.
Well, that's what
All
made me ask the
acknowledge
question.
that I should not have said that because the county is gonna require a deed restriction that it has to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Full-time occupied by somebody who works in the county.
Thank you for the
But it's a
clarification.
nice idea somewhere else.
It was warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
And that is the same deed restriction that is in the town limits as well.
Right.
It is required for full-time occupancy only by somebody that's a member of the Frisco work or the local workforce.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Or is everybody hungry and wants to go home to their families? Yeah, heartburn, yeah. Well, we're really appreciative of you all and Donna for the last 20 years in Congress for all of this. And we know it's a huge community need. And I think there's tremendous support around it. And if we can continue to collaborate and get through these obstacles, hopefully one day we'll have a shovel in the ground.
Yep.
So thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the public for participating. Is there any updates from staff?
Really briefly, we do have 4 planning commission seats that are going to be up as of April 30th. So we'll be start advertising for those and certainly inviting those seats to reapply. That would be Andy, Patrick, Lena, and Donna's seats are all up. So we'll be, the goal and the timeline for that is hopefully if the new council would interview at their first meeting in May and then the point at that same meeting if possible. So they'd be seated at the second meeting in May.
Don,
I believe Patrick was a 2-year because he was filling Andy Held's seat at the time. So I think these would all be turning into 4-year now.
Lena's got a question, Lena?
Don, what is is there a difference between like, do we have to re-interview or do we just ask to be reappointed? What's the procedure for existing commissioners?
Yeah, so I was under the impression 2 years ago that it was the existing commissioners didn't have to get re-interviewed, but then I was corrected by one of the council members. So they, at least the current council wants to re-interview everybody and all applicants.
Okay.
Okay.
I got interviewed last year. Yeah.
Painful, wasn't it?
I know, they liked me enough, I guess. All right, well, on that note, we are gonna adjourn tonight's meeting.
All right, thank you all for, yeah, thank you all for persevering
Can
and
I-
pushing through.
Can I just say, it's really great to be able to participate virtually when I need to. So just really awesome. Thank
Well,
you.
we missed you here.
Oh, boo-hoo.
I do have one other, just note, we received from our HR department today that as of Monday night at midnight,
I would.
no more town hall
Woo!
announcement. Very excited. You can
That's-
still wear them if you want to as of a Tuesday, but I'm not going to.
How's the?
We are just right,